It being 6 o'clock, I'd like to call the Senior Center Building Committee to order. The only committee member that we don't have tonight was Greg Bendel, Selectman Greg Bendel. He had already called me, told me he was not going to make it tonight. Also, via Zoom, we have Diane Allen up on the screen. Also with us tonight, Dan Pilato, our OPM, Lee Morissette, and John Hammer. The first item on our agenda is a review of the minutes from February 9th. You all should have received a copy of that. Has everyone had an opportunity to review?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of February 9th as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion by Teresa Manganelli, seconded by Terry Marciello. We'll take a vote. I don't believe we need a roll call vote because we're not via Zoom or in person. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of adjacencies, building layout with Dietz and Company. Lee, your presentation is up. I see there's been some handouts. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much, George. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. On the screen to our right, one facing the camera and then another facing the audience, we have a presentation that we've put together for you, which will be the
Excuse me for 1 second. I just want, if you're going to speak, if you could speak into the microphone. This is for WCTV, who's with us tonight.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you, sir. So,
Sorry, proceed.
Mic check.
so the presentation on the screen, I hope everyone can see it from the gallery as well as from the TV, is the presentation we'll use as a motivation for our discussion tonight, and it covers a number of points. I'll do a quick agenda. These are general ideas for the conversation and where we're going. First, we're going to review the findings from the feasibility study and how they've informed the next step of test fitting for option 4A and 5. 4A and 5 are the result of not last week, but last meeting's discussion about design options and preferred revisions and explorations. After that, we're going to move smoothly into a landscape site amenities discussion with John Hammer here from SLR, because that's the new topic of discussion, if anything, for this week, is how the building fits with the site. And so from that discussion, we're looking for comments, direction, feedback in general, so we can continue that development. We'll be presenting 2 options for site test fits as directed from our last meeting. We'll go into that in a little bit of detail. We'll talk about pros and cons, and we're looking for interesting conversation that leads us to a design direction. After that, we'll discuss the landscape site amenities in general, about what goes into the site and how to fit them together with the building. More of a, are you seeing everything you want kind of discussion. And then we'll then go back to the building itself and talk about some design updates of the inside of the building and the outside of the building, some volume and massing explorations that we've done. And I wanted to share some design inspiration with you all because I had a really fantastic conversation with Terry this last week about design input and inspiration. We met on site at the Senior Center, had a fantastic discussion, and I was really excited, so I went home and drew a bunch, and I want to share that with you tonight. And then we'll talk about next steps.
Lee?
Yes.
Excuse me, I want to raise my hand for the chairman there. I can't see anything that you're doing,
Oh, no.
okay? The camera is it on that screen right behind you as well? Because
Yes.
it's just white.
Oh, you've got a horrible glare.
White.
Yeah, I don't think you can get that through via Zoom. Do you have your presentation with you?
I do have the presentation. I just did, and I'm following it as on my computer here. But I know Lee just said that he had some new things.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say that if they were on that screen right behind him, it just shows completely white.
Yeah, I can see up on the screen that what you're seeing, and I think it washes out completely.
It washes out completely, yeah. Is there any way that,
Let's see what happens when we do some color on that. Because right now, it's just some font with a white screen, so.
Can you see that at all?
Can you see
Well,
that?
now I see a little bit of a green blue. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see a little bit of green blue.
I don't know if,
Can you read the third line from the bottom?
That might be a little better, yeah, that might be a little better, yeah.
yeah, this is this is in the
I'm sorry, I
presentation.
didn't mean to interrupt you, I didn't realize that, there were two there, okay.
No, I appreciate that. Rule number one in video conferencing is alert technical difficulties as soon as possible. I don't want you to miss anything. It is. We'll get to a small deviation in development. I had some time to draw today, so I want to give the most up-to-date version, but the changes are very small, Diane, and we can send you a PDF. Okay. So, first, the feasibility test fit site plans. I want to remind you of this because of just as a recap of how we got to where we are now, and to inform also the discussion that John will be leading. So the first exploration of test fits was the building at we're going to say the back of the site, meaning the side of the site furthest from Main Street, so farthest to the east. This was our first take, and we began to explore the test fitting there. There were a number of pros and cons, so we developed a second option as well to compare. This was kind of the building.
I think it's just gonna be a little louder.
All right.
And maybe if you turn a little and kind of spoke to John, the audience might hear you.
Sit here.
Or you can sit here.
I'm willing to go up there and just carry the mic in my hand. I really don't care.
Well,
Whatever.
that's for WCTV, that's not for the audience.
I'll be louder. Okay. So this first option shows the building in the back of the site. We'll say the back being the furthest from Main Street, so back into the trees right now. Buried, yes, on the other side of the parking lot. This had some pros and cons to it, so we also developed a second option, which was the building at the south end of the site, kind of to the right if you're standing on Main Street looking at the trees. This one was very linear, and it had some additional pros and cons, but the north side door was a little bit of a challenge on the front door. And so we arrived on this third option, which we called option C from feasibility. You might remember this one as being the preferred option coming out of the feasibility exercise. This one put the building up on the street, about the same distance from the street as St. Dorothy's, maybe a little closer, its neighbor. And the parking in the back, and the entrance on the northeast corner of the building. And the idea there was to get it around the corner so it wasn't always in the shade, and it was closest to the parking lot. This was preferred because it offered a number of amenities, which we'll go into shortly as we've developed it. But it was brought up at that point that we should also consider a two-story option, and what that might do to the site as well. And the simplest place that was suggested was just put it in the middle of the site and see what it does for you. And here you can see it's very much like the original option, just 2 stories. Small recap is at the end of feasibility, the direction was to go with a single-story building toward Main Street and go with option C. So that's what we pursued with. Now, we've since developed the building plan more and also develop the site more. So tonight I want to share the mic with John and show you 2 options. We have an option 4A and 4B. The number is really inconsequential, except that this is the 4th version of the plan that we've done, and the A is, you had some comments last time, so we've incorporated those, so it's now 4A. You'll notice in both options that the building is exactly the same. However, the building was designed for this location as a natural development from the end of feasibility. I'll skip forward real quick. The second option you're going to see tonight is option 5. It's the same building footprint rotated and pushed all the way to the back of the site based on feedback from our last meeting. So, at this point, John, I thought we'd do this together. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
So tell us a little bit about, we'll do an interview format. Tell us about your process for laying out the building here.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my name is John Hammer. I am a licensed landscape architect with SLR Consulting. I've been with the company for 20 years, and I've worked on several senior centers over the past 10 years or whatever it's been. So this is one of my favorite project types because just as a backstory, they're challenging for site design because most of the time on these sites, we want everything to be flush with no transitions, no trip hazards. And on most of the sites that you go to that aren't senior centers, there are curbs everywhere. And then there's these curb cuts that you have to funnel yourself to. And all the parking lots are surrounded by curb. All of the islands have curb. So it makes traversing the site somewhat more challenging than it needs to be. And if anybody's gone to other senior centers, you've probably seen the Ludlow one that Dietz and we did is all flush. That does present some of its own challenges as well, but generally these senior center sites for site design are very challenging because with our weather and environment, we generally want to have a lot of slope and pitch on things to move water, but for senior center design, you want to have everything flat and not pitched. So they're fighting each other throughout the entire design process. Just as a backstory, something you may not be aware of. So there's a lot of constraints or bounding boxes, if you will, that drive site design for us. We're concerned about the street presence, which was presented as option C, right, where we call it context sensitivity, where we're concerned about zoning things, where the building is respecting the distance from Main Street like all the other houses are, instead of sort of the shopping plaza concept where you have the parking out front and the building in the back. We moved it to the front so that it was in harmony with all the rest of the street. So that's a factor. The neighborhood proximities, in other words, how close is our stuff to everybody else's stuff? Specifically their house, right? Everybody who's a neighbor of something else is always concerned about how close are you putting whatever it is to whatever my stuff is. And am I going to be able to see it, right? So that's a consideration. And you'll notice those things are at the top. The context sensitivity to the street, to the corridor to be harmonious with the neighborhood and the neighbors, right? So along with that goes what most home improvement shows, HGTV, the whole curb appeal concept, like does it look cool from the street, right? That's a factor. And these things start to put the building in a spot on the site, all right? So we call that the building location. Then we have, not because they're less important, but we feel like we can get fire suppression and emergency access in almost any configuration. It's just, is it better or less better depending on where we put it? So I refer to that as fire suppression, access, and circulation, emergency vehicle circulation. And we can accommodate that. We have the Wilmington fire truck apparatus, and both of these concepts I have personally maneuvered the truck in the computer around and left some space for the equipment. Next is the visibility and proximity to the street for perceived or actual security. So we'll just put this in the security bucket. It's worth noting that there is an actual realized security, and then there is a perception of security, and they're not the same thing. So when the building is close to the street, you get both. You get actual security and you get perceived security because it can be seen from the street. The police can drive by and you can see if anybody's in the building, right? And it puts the parking lot, sort of in the back. Then there's the actual security, which both of the concepts meet. Because you can have cameras, you can have lighting, all of the traditional things that result in real security. So the next thing is the building easy to find? So wayfinding, right? I'm driving down Main Street. Can I see the senior center? Or can I not see the senior center? So visibility. What is the presence of the building in relationship to how you're getting to it? The last one really is about the solar orientation. When the sun takes its path around and over during the day, it's pretty difficult to make all sides of the building, sunny and great all the times of the year, but we're trying to optimize it based on what more or less your preferences are. Do you want the door to be in the sun all the time? Or do you want your patio to be in the sun, or one end of the building or the other? So those are things we consider, the weather and the sun. So those are the big criteria that we use to lay out these sites. And then what we started doing is laying out the actual parking and the circulation. So both of the concepts share almost all of these things. They all have what are 24-foot wide. Well, first they all have 3 rows at the entry. A right turn, a left turn, and an in. So you can turn in, you can go right, or you can go left. The traffic study isn't done, so I don't know exactly what the configurations will be, but for now, we went conservative and showed all 3. Okay? So there's a right turn out, a left turn out, and a turn in. All the driveways are 24 feet wide, so that's 2 12-foot lanes. And the drop-off along the front of the building is 12 feet wide. It will probably become 13 feet wide because the CMR 521, which is the ADA code for Massachusetts, requires you to have a accessible path next to parallel parking. So that would be a 9-foot parking space and 5 feet of striping. If we go all flush, then we don't need that, but for right now, I've got it close to do it both ways, so it's kind of inconsequential. But we are thinking about it. So the one of the concepts has better relationships to the neighbors in some places than the other concept in other places. So I don't know, Lee, if you want to get into.
Well, I think it might be helpful to point out what is specific about this site relative to the other site to draw people's attention.
Okay, great. So in option 4A, we held a certain distance that the houses on the right-hand side on Brattle Street, I believe it is,
Yes.
so the houses are about 75 feet away from our parking lot. Okay, so
The lot line.
from the house.
Oh, the house. Oh, I see the top one. Says
Yeah, there's a 75 feet from the house to the parking. So that is big enough to put,
Excuse me, are you looking at 3D view, or are you looking at the black and white?
the black and white.
Site
Black and
plan.
white, thank you.
Yep, there's
I'm
some,
sorry.
there's some dimensions on there, and up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a 76-foot dimension. Oh, that's helpful. That goes from the parking, back of the parking to, I cut off the house number there, but it's pointing to a gray box, and that's somebody's house. And then there's a 58-foot or 58-foot dimension from the property line to the parking space with a tree in between those dimensions. So we'll just say the parking is 75 feet away from the houses, and the parking is about 60 feet away from the property line, which is generous in most cases. You can cut that in half and still screen properties, for context.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I'm just thinking of illumination. If you had parking lot lighting, is this something that's going to be shining it to somebody's?
No.
Okay.
So the lighting is required to have 0 light trespass off of the property,
Okay.
and being 75, and you're also not supposed to see the point source, the bulbs, now
Okay.
that they're LEDs, there's a million of them under there. But it will not be shining onto anybody's property.
Thank you.
I'm guessing planning board's gonna want a photometric
Yes, there will be.
when we get to planning board.
Sure.
There'll be a photometric. There's requirements for minimum, maximums, averages, so on and so forth, so.
Okay.
Color.
So we'll cover that. So, but I just wanted to point out that this site plan has about 75 feet from the properties to the east, and on the properties to the south, which is the bottom of the plan, there's no parking there at all. The only thing you'll hear is people playing pickleball or bocce, if you live on that side of the property.
And how far, what is the distance between the south border and the nearest home, any idea?
They get cut off on the sheet, but I want to say there's at least another 30 feet to the closest house. But I'd have to confirm that. I don't know offhand.
30 feet from the dumpster trash called refuse to the property line, and then the houses are another 20 feet beyond that. Just scaling. We can check into that.
Okay.
Excuse me, John, would you just, and this has been a question that's always asked, would you just say north, south, east, west, point with your finger or something?
Down.
I find that people are always asking, how come they don't put those symbols on? They talk about it.
So there is there's an arrow in the bottom right there.
Arrow in the bottom, yes.
So north, but I can refer, since north is up, I can just refer to it as the top of the sheet, the bottom of the sheet, the right and the left going forward. That's helpful. Makes it easier. We don't have to worry about our cardinal directions. So the pickleball, the pickleball courts, we showed 2 of them for now. We can talk about how many you want, exactly what you want. We just put some amenities there, bocce, with a pergola between them, whatever, if you want one, if you don't. But the nice thing about this is it's direct, at least I think, it's directly connected to the outdoor gathering space, which is connected to the building without going through a parking lot or taking a sidewalk or anything. It's all right there. So you could be having a sandwich or whatever, or a snack on the entertainment, the patio, we'll just call it the patio. And then you could go from there straight over to bocce or pickleball. You could keep your drinks or whatever sitting there. It's kind of nice to have that next to you. Some people might say it's distracting with pickleball playing and being next to the patio, but whatever. Again, it's a starting place. So just back to the parking lot real quick. I got tangential there. In both of the options we provide, and this will matter for a senior center director, we provide 2 minibus, I call them minibus or oversized van parking spaces, right? And they're 10 feet by 25 feet. A traditional parking space is 9 by 18, so all the rest of them are 9 by 18. Each of the concepts has at least 165 parking spaces, and I believe we're double the amount of accessible parking than that of which we need.
In particular, I really like how you put the accessible parking spaces right on the north side of the building, I'm sorry, the top of the sheet, side of the building, right when you come in. So there's an accessible parking area, and then there's the drop-off. So it's kind of like a double drop-off zone.
Right. And the rest of the accessible parking spaces have the symbol in them that are at the head of all the islands. So you get, first come, first serve for the pull-off parking. There's an 8-foot wide sidewalk there, which is up for debate. I just showed them as 8. They can be whatever we think is appropriate here. But so you get the accessible parking, you get the drop-off space, which will hold at least 2 cars, a minibus, probably a full-size school bus. There's plenty of space there. And we can circulate the fire truck around that loop on the lower right-hand corner. And along with that, we can also get the refuse truck, which has to head in straight in to the dumpsters. They can't come in on an angle. They can't, you can't put them off on a skew. They have this gigantic fork on the front. So everything has to come straight in. So for now, we show 2 dumpsters over there. And we don't have images of it here with us, but it's typically a cedar fence enclosure. It's not a chain link fence, ugly thing. And also those van parking spaces I was talking about are in this pull-off, in this loop down here. So finally, in that loop are 2 loading spaces that go directly over to the kitchen, where that sidewalk is, where Lee's moving the mouse around, right above the pickleball courts. So you'll see there's 2 loading spaces there in a big boxed out area so that they have room to get in and out of the van with food or whatever it is.
Can I ask a question about when you enter in, you said the trash trucks, when you go straight in, your parking spaces don't look like they would be trajectory straight to where they would come in. Would that still work for that truck to pick up those items?
Yeah. Yep.
Excuse me. Says, I know who you are, but you have to introduce yourself.
Sorry.
Typically, give your residence and then your name. Just, okay.
So the question was, if those parking spaces were gonna block the trash truck, right?
Yeah, well, if the actual compartment is to be driven in straight, it looks like it's toward the island of the, instead of toward where the trash truck would come, you know?
So the trash truck comes around the front of the building, follow me, Lee, yep, around there, across the front, around the corner, down, and then straight into the back there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at
That's what
the
I
other
figured.
side of the parking lot. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And the last thing about this design, two things. All of the islands are 10 feet wide between the rows of parking, which we will need to meet zoning regulations for our landscape requirements and buffers. And there's an arrow up at the top corner of the sheet up there that takes you out to the open space. So the parking you could park, a lot of people who go up there will probably want to park up there versus parking close into the senior center. So it double purposes the parking lot. So you get it to use it for the senior center if there's not close parking, but you can also use it to get direct access out to the passive recreation open space area up there.
One thing, thank you, John. One thing I would like to point out before we move on to option 5 is how in this plan, in option 4A, in the black and white plan, you see how all of the parking aisles turn straight to the door. They turn and bend toward the building, and you get the end of the parking aisles always pointing toward the building. John reminded me that this is desirable based on human behavior, of how you get out of your car and walk from your car to the front door. If a parking aisle doesn't point at a front door or where you're supposed to go, it is a little disorienting. And then when you do figure out where you need to go, you find yourself cutting across medians or not using the crosswalk, and it becomes a less safe environment for pedestrians. So this option is quite good in that we were able to fit the parking on the site, take advantage of the wider part of the site with the parking and the narrower part of the site to the left with the building, and the parking fits very well with the front door.
The farthest parking space away from the building in this concept is also 30 feet closer to the building than the furthest parking space in the next option. So you could end up 30 feet away in the next option, and you'll see how the parking doesn't really flow nicely. So, thank you.
Can I ask just a question about, if you can go back to that prior, so the distance between I guess the loading dock area, or which I believe is in the lower corner of the building, correct? The corner that is closest to the pickleball, is that where the kitchen and perhaps the folks would exit with trash and so on? What is the distance between that portion of the building and the where the dumpsters would be?
So each one of the parking spaces is 9 feet. So probably about 140 feet from the door of the kitchen to the refuse.
So presumably the expectation is that when trash needs to be brought out to the dumpster, they're going to go out of that space. I guess in the lower end of the building, they're kind of follow that little path and then go through the parking lot to get to that back corner.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, I guess, is that realistic for, given that distance that particularly in the winter when conditions are less favorable and all?
Yeah, I would expect that in order to get the fire truck around there, it has to be plowed and salted and everything else. So it's not a not doable situation.
I would think you would want some distance anyways away from those pickleball courts, because the last things you want to smell in the
Right.
summertime is the dumpster.
It is easy to do it, is the nice thing. It's a straight shot. straight to it. So, and you're going down a parking aisle, which is wide open. And for what it's worth, I used to work in at a school as a janitor, so I'm very. I scraped gum and all of that to pay for college, but yeah, I know all about going from. I cleaned grease traps too for what it's worth. So I would go from the kitchen straight out to the dumpsters. There is an opportunity here to put it so at the bottom of the sheet where those, there. That would be another option because we could make it so the truck comes straight down and into those spaces. But I didn't think it was really appropriate to put them that close to the pickleball court.
Right, I mean, certainly there's a trade-off, obviously, between, the last thing you want to do is have dumpsters near where people are going to be gathering either for pickleball or just to converse, but, so it is, I guess, a balance between a reasonable distance and keeping it away from where people are going to congregate.
Jim Buckley, 6 Pine Road. I'm a pickleball guy. Is there any way you just take those pickleball courts out of there and put them into the pine?
We can discuss a lot of that
Yeah, I know, that's
when
what
we
it
get into
sounds
public
like.
comment.
I mean, you're talking about the refuse being right next to the pickleball courts. Just take them out of there, put them back in the parking lot, cut some trees down, put them back in there. And you're out of the sun and it's nice and shady, like they have out here, Okay, I'm out of water, but I do that out there.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Can I ask a question?
Good.
Terry, the dumpster that you have right now is like right next to your area in the summer. Is there any issue with that?
Yes.
With odor? Okay.
Yeah, we have squirrels. The squirrels are in there, so it makes it very difficult.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Terry. I saw it was actually conveniently close to your building, but as far from the building as you can get right now, based on where you are, and it's not far enough away. And so it is a bit of a balance. So I'm just kind of echoing what everyone said. If the dumpsters move closer, it becomes more convenient for that daily, refuse disposal, but it does begin to displace some very desirable program elements, as we say, things that we want to put next to the building. So it's a bit of a balance.
How many bags are we talking a day?
I can't answer that question, I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Depends on the usage.
Yeah,
I know that my
day.
custodial staff that goes over there, depends on the day and what's being done,
So
so,
if we're having
So
a lot.
the custodial staff takes care of the trash?
correct.
So I'm wondering if we even need dumpsters or whether you just put them in carts and have them come grab the carts in the morning.
I would think a dumpster would be
Would be
needed.
better?
I would believe
So
so.
if your custodial staff's doing it, would we be better off putting the dumpster on the side where the church is, so it's not near residences? I'm thinking
That's
of a
pretty
planning
far.
board hearing.
That certainly, because you have residents that are right along that back corner, correct?
You got 4 right in that corner.
I'm so sorry, where are you thinking? Where are you saying?
I'm just saying anywhere, along the church side of the property, if it's possible, since it's already a parking lot use, it's not.
I'm sure that's something we could look at.
Yeah.
I also want to say to the audience, I see some people want to make some comments. I want to let the committee members talk. And before we go to the next shot, I'm going to reach out and let some people make some comments.
Yeah, let me just add about this dumpster before we get too wound up or whatever about it. It's movable. So long as that we can drive into it head on, it's movable. There's probably 4 or 5 places that it can go on the site. So just because we show it in a specific spot, we have to start somewhere. So
In fact, I asked you to move it.
yes,
So we're already at spot number 2.
we're already, it's already been asked to be.
Okay.
So it could go up at the top at the end of the entry drive in that triangle. It could go down by the pickleball courts where the 2 parking spaces are. It could move up the right side of the plan and head in from the other aisle. It could head in from the aisle up there. Actually, no, we have not run a trash truck or any large vehicle around that tight radius up there. So it needs to stay in either the loop or off of the main entry drive without some major redesign to the top of that parking lot.
I might offer that putting it at the end, I might offer that putting it at the end of the entry is not the thing we wanna see when we drive in. I mean, it's gonna be a nice dumpster enclosure, don't get me
Good
wrong,
comment.
but
Terry has a comment.
You know, as you, Dan, you had asked about, or Paul, you had asked about the trash. You know, I do foresee, I mean, this building is gonna be used a lot for large functions.
Sure.
I mean, keeping in mind that hall is, can hold up to 250
Yep.
alone. So, and there is gonna be luncheons, and there's gonna be dinners, and so I do foresee that even though it's a small spot, it will be a frequently used spot, and it's really hard to gauge now, but I do foresee in the future, that's gonna be an active spot to be going to.
Terry, did you ever see a situation where seniors are going to be bringing things out to the dumpster?
No.
Okay.
Just another
custodial
question,
staff
in
does
in
that.
terms of, you know, this design, the ability to have access to that back leg, if you will, that was talked about in the prior meeting as being a potential area for some kind of a walking path, perhaps. And obviously, well, it would seem that you want to try to minimize instances where people are having to cross a parking lot to get to that area on the far right of the diagram there. How would you, or have you given thought to how folks might access that back leg? Would it be kind of across that narrow part of the, right there, or would it be down around the bottom and up, or?
Yeah, so we've only put the least amount of sidewalks on the plan to make it workable from the parking spaces to the building. There's a lot of other parts to the site that would have to be developed based on survey and topography and things that we don't have. And those will drive probably some slight changes and whatever else to the plan. But ideally, we would follow from the corner of the building right there, across there, and go around the backside of the parking lot into a trail system that goes through the buffer and then out into the woods. I showed the arrow up there just to indicate that you can get from the parking spaces to the open space, because I'm expecting people are gonna park up there and then go to the open space. People that would come from the senior center to go to the open space wouldn't go down the parking aisles. That's not the intent of the plan. We just haven't shown how that would work at this stage.
Okay.
Lee, one of the popular things that Terry does, I know, is the grab and go, or she has a lot of. Can you kind of point to me? I'm looking at this and I'm like, where are you kind of planning on that?
I wish we had a split screen so we could show you a plan and the site plan at the same time. We'll do that next time. But to jog your memory, the bottom right corner of the building, so the gray L portion, the gray L shape that we have here is our building. The bottom right portion of the building is the kitchen.
Right.
And so the front door is the top right outside corner of the building. So that drop off can be extended even further if we wanted to include that grab and go station at this upper right-hand corner of the building. And we've begun to anticipate that being maybe a door directly off of the dining area itself, instead of having to go into the kitchen, because that's kind of inconvenient. Kitchens are optimized to cook,
Out of the dining room.
but to go out of the dining room instead, directly adjacent to the kitchen might be a very good place to stage up a bunch of tables, have plenty of space to spread out and get things set up, and then from there, you could have a door out of the kitchen. And we've actually anticipated that as part of the use of the building, which will show up in a visual toward the end where there's actually a canopy that covers that whole area.
Okay, thank you. Terry.
If I could just mention, grab and go's actually started due to the fact of COVID and not being able to use our, being able to eat in a space. So I do see the grab and go's continuing, but not being a very large program as much as we're gonna be using that, because we'll be using that dining hall. I mean, I'm foreseeing things will be getting better for our future, so not having to have the grab and go's being such a strong thing as they are now. But I do still like the fact of that you're saying for that option to be able to leave that dining room in that way, and that gives options for other types of programming that could happen in that same way. But I just don't want a lot to focus on the fact of that, driving in and the spot, because that, again, it was a program that truly started because of COVID.
Right. might be beneficial to other handouts of things that you
Yes,
want,
exactly.
Days Farmers Market, or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
that, you know.
But I do see it as a wonderful thing, but not to say that it's gonna be a grab and go, could be other options to be used for.
To the director. Terry, do you think that you'll be doing grab and go and lunch at the same time? Will it be an inconvenience to exit the dining room and do grab and go during lunch? Are we better off having a little spot in the kitchen for grab and go, so the exit comes out of the kitchen as opposed to coming out of the dining room? I mean, I understand grab
Oh,
and go.
you're saying like out of the kitchen?
So we're post-COVID, you have 20 seniors that still wanna do grab and go, but you're serving 130 people inside the dining room. Is it gonna be an inconvenience to be doing grab and go out of the dining room in the winter, when the door's opening and closing, and bringing in cold air to the patrons of the dining room while you're doing, grab and go? Or would it be easier to just have grab and go come from the kitchen, even though it's not optimum for the kitchen, if we can find a way to design a table to stack up all of the grab and goes?
I think that's a great idea.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My concern is having the two uses at once in the winter.
You know, Teresa just said right here, what about both?
Right. So if you're not having diners currently in the dining area and you want to grab and go, then you have access at that point. But if you do have that kind of
They
situation,
can come out of the kitchen.
go through the kitchen and you can just, you have options.
Maybe
But I-
come
but
out
I-
that
but I agree-
service door.
I agree that the drop-off should be brought as far down as possible, because it might not be grab and go, it might be
Like you were
You
just
know,
saying, like a fruit.
first aid kits, or whatever you know,
Right.
you're serving at the time.
Or giving out.
Can I just ask a question to, maybe clarify some things too? Maybe this would be for Terry to answer. The question that Dan just asked, would you have a grab and go option going on at the same time if people could come into the building and pick up whatever that was, the luncheon or whatever, or is it an either-or situation?
Ideally, it would probably be an either-or situation, and if for some reason, if we did have a grab and go the same time, I would make, the grab and go before, the actual luncheon, and then have the luncheon, so they're not running at the same time. That would be too much, and I would
That
think
would be
it'd
very,
be
I
a
would
safety
agree.
issue. That would be a safety
That's what I
issue.
was thinking of. I mean, grab and go would, require cars coming in, lining up, and directing them whatever way they're gonna be directed around to get to the grab and go. And then you're gonna have people coming in that are just gonna be parking, and they're gonna feel like they're behind a car, that they don't really wanna be there, and they wanna just park and get into the building. So I'm glad that you answered that it would be an either or and they wouldn't be done at the same time.
No, yeah, do that safety issue.
Now, I see that in this option is the 3D view. The roof line's a little different than the presentation that I sent out earlier. So,
This is the development I mentioned earlier today. We had a little extra time to draw some more, so we tried to bring it to a point where we felt it was more cohesive. And I'm happy to discuss this toward the end. There's some additional precedent imagery as well in here, design reference.
all right, I would like to go out to some of the audience. I know they've been waiting to say a few things, so is there any comment right now from the public?
My
State-
name is Linda Toth, I live at 54 Fiorenza Drive. When you were talking about the dumpsters and the refuge, you were talking about them coming in straight. Now, are these like the large dumpsters that are out in the back of the building now, so they're gonna be lifted over the cab instead of from the side, like the normal, town garbage pickup is? 'Cause
Correct.
mine gets picked from the side,
Yeah, no, this,
Okay.
These would be
the
like
industrial ones.
like 6 to 8 yard.
correct, 6-yard dumpster.
Okay.
Dumpsters, they have, the truck comes in with a fork, like
Right.
pitchfork on the front, and it goes up and over the top,
Okay,
and then they
just,
set it back down.
just checking.
Absolutely.
It's
Thank
like
you
a
for-
50-foot long thing, it's huge.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, I'm sorry, just to that point, you know, one of the things I guess we have to be mindful of, and, you know, this gets into details maybe not for tonight, but given how loud those can be, we, you know, the last thing neighbors I'm sure are gonna wanna hear is at 10 o'clock at night or 5 in the morning, you know, a dumpster being tossed over the back of the truck.
Sure, if it's 10 o'clock at night, we're gonna get some complaints. So
Right.
I'll even get called.
we'll give out Dan's number.
It would be helpful if I can ask the town a couple of things, is to get your actual refuse company that you were gonna use at the senior center, or to start thinking about it. Because not all dumpsters are the same, and not all spaces are the same, and we try to design.
And that's contractual. That's something
Right.
they go out to bid. So that's nothing that's just standard from year to year, so.
I was gonna say, that's gonna change, and we wanna make sure we have the flexibility in the space to accommodate, you know, the 3-year contract, the 5-year contract that's gonna
And
rotate.
another thing that we should also consider, if it's going to be, is recycles too. Our recycle container is gonna be paper, so we're gonna be able to, and those will be a tote, most likely. That'll be lined up someplace where they could come in and grab
So
it.
they are not, these things are usually not presented as glamorous and glorious things, but, you know, I'm a landscape architect, so you can ask Dan, they've seen the glamorous one, if you've been to Ludlow, you've seen it.
Yeah.
We can make them so that there's a door on the side, and that it's big enough that you can put all the totes in there. You
Oh,
can
yeah, I've
put the
seen that one.
dumpsters in there, you can fit it, pretty much all of it in there with big, easy swinging double gates when they don't freeze because of the rain, but, yes. We're
Yeah.
going to make something, we shouldn't wait until the end to figure out who your refuse company is.
All right, I can get that information over to you.
Perfect.
In the back?
Suzanne Clarkin, 39 Reno Road, Wilmington. Oh, obviously Wilmington. It looks like from the pictures that you have here that there's nice lush trees, but in reality, what's on that side is pine and scrub pine, which in turn is gonna need a pretty nice view of AAA tire. How are you gonna replace those trees?
Right, so I drove around Massachusetts Ave, I believe it is, and I can never remember Brattle. I went around the loop twice tonight before I came here to look at the trees again, and they're like 60 to 80 foot pine trees with no lower branches on them, and you can actually see straight through to Main Street. So I'm fully aware of the situation there. And what's gonna happen is we're going to plant the property line with evergreens that are not gonna lose their branches on the lower portions. And we also can, I don't make decisions, but we also can put understory plantings in there to fill it in so that we don't have, you know, this gap underneath that you see straight through. So.
And you're gonna propose those, so
Right.
they'll decide whether they're gonna
Yes.
do them.
And the same goes for the street plantings. What we do for trees between the building and the street, we can propose any number of types of trees that would be appropriate, or provide shade, or help block views, or, you know, make the building look nice, whatever we decide as a group.
We do have a ways to go. We
Yes.
first have to get through building design.
Yeah. The reason I brought up the neighborhood and the neighbors in the very beginning, and I specifically said that the houses were 75 feet away from the parking lot, because that's enough room to put a full-size 25-foot wide evergreen tree, 3 of them, stacked, if you get my gist. We can normally accomplish the same thing with one row that's like a zigzag, staggered, and they fill in. So we have 3 times as much space between the houses and the parking as we actually need to come to do the screen. So I'm confident that you're gonna be screened.
Okay,
Can I raise my hand here?
go ahead.
George?
Go ahead.
On the same subject of which Suzanne was talking about, there are boulders along that, which I'm assuming are designating the property line. where that AAA is. Was that put there by the town, or
Yes.
had
Yeah,
they?
yes, it was. It was to prevent people from putting refuse there or, you know, parking and different.
Parking, right, because I noticed they were encroaching more and more and more. And so the town put the boulders there.
Correct.
And so in addition to the evergreen type of trees that would not lose their foliage and everything, would a fence in addition to that also help?
So typically, I love this discussion, right? It's landscape architecture here. Woo! So we get to mix fencing with plants. You know, we can do all kinds of elaborate and intricate different designs. You can do evergreens and then a fence, and then evergreens and then a fence, so that it's like not all just a fence, which is actually kind of nice because you're not looking at a wall. You can do a fence that the neighbors see and then plantings behind it. You can do plantings the neighbors see and then a fence. We can do almost any imaginable configuration of screening and aesthetics that your budget can desire. And I strategically said budget can desire because with all those great things goes great money. So we have to be strategic about balancing what we spend and what we deliver, if you will, because we don't need probably to do the most elaborate things to accomplish the same things we could do with other means. So yes, is the short answer. There's a lot of different ways to do it. A fence is one option.
Okay. So like I said, we first have to get through the building design, so I don't want to get too tied up on the site plan. I mean, the landscaping.
Having said that, we have another site plan.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I did like the 3D, so
We're gonna start with a 2D, because it's a little easier to read on paper, and then we'll go to 3D after that. I'd like to point out, to start with the description of option 5, and this is just to set you up, John. The entrance road off of Main Street that comes in and takes a right is exactly the same in both schemes. You'll notice that here. This is on purpose. And in scheme 5, the parking is in the front, the building's in the back, and in scheme 4A, it's the opposite. So that's to say the queuing onto the Main Street is the same, the access onto Main Street the same, the turn lanes are the same, and it's the same distance from the end of this road to Main Street. The major difference is that the front door is a lot closer to the entrance on 4A than it is on 5. And then for other differences, I'll turn it back to John.
Right, so option 5. So all the things that option 4, okay, well, let's back up. All the things that I said earlier about the 24-foot wide aisles, the 12-foot wide access drop-off, I'm not going to repeat any of that because it's all the same. The dumpster is the same size. The parking, we have the same amount of spaces, more or less. So this is really about what's the difference between one concept and the other, right? So this uses the exact same building in both scenarios. There's no building redesign that's been done. So now, on this concept, we have parking within 10 feet, or parking within 20 feet of the street. We have parking within 10 feet of the neighbors on the bottom, but we don't have parking close to the neighbors on the right-hand side of the sheet. However, the building mass is the same distance away as the parking was, so, I mean, cars versus building, that's an opinion at that point. The screening of the building, though, becomes much more difficult, I would argue, in this concept, because we don't generally want to put 80-foot pine trees next to buildings. It's just, in the long term, that's not ideal, right? And pine plants don't just stop, right? We plant them and then they grow for 80, 50, whatever it's going to be, unless you cut them down and then replant them. So under the premise that nothing would happen to those trees after we planted them, they would end up being what you have out there with an understory. So now they're towering over the building and over the courtyard, over the patio, all of the stuff that's in the back. So I'm going to put that in the disadvantageous category, okay? The building, well, the parking, as Lee alluded to, is not convenient to get to the front door because most people are going to want to follow those lines that are, you'll notice those are dimensions, okay? And people are going to want to walk those lines. That's just the way we are as people. We don't want to go up to the top and all the way down to get to the door. It's super annoying. And somebody will go across the island and trip or fall or do something. We could put a sidewalk down that aisle and it would never get used because you're not going to do that. You're going to cut between the cars, then you're going to go in between the next row of cars, and eventually the cars will become annoying and you'll go down the aisle and then go to the door. So the parking on this, the layout of it, we tried rotating this a lot of different ways, but this is the maximum amount of spaces we could get in that space with it oriented with the building and so on. Another disadvantage to this one is that all of the parking in the top loop is accessible. There's no standard spaces up there. So that would be a loop for accessible parking and drop off only. And there's only 4 parking spaces that get you up into the open space, and the pickleball and the bocce is all trying to fight for 4 spaces and a turnaround.
And the reason for the accessible parking spots being so close to the door is, why do the accessible spots have to be up there and not in the rest of the parking lot?
Well, right, we're required by code to put them as close to the door as possible.
So they win.
So they win every time.
Lee, I also notice from the 2 different locations, we'll call it the terrace in the back, you don't get that southern exposure that you do in the other options, so you're not going to get that sun that's going
That's right.
to. Oh, I mean, I do see on the option A that you had a canopy there or something that if they wanted to get out of the sun and be in the shade.
Yes.
Or come out of the dining room, they could be there. But in this other one, you're not getting that.
It's actually, in truth and fairness, this is exactly the same building model turned. So the canopies are there, they're just not doing anything for you. They're there, they're just pointed northwest and pretty much east. And they don't offer the same kind of shade because the building is already shading the patio for the most part.
So those nice sunny days when people would like to sit out there, they're not gonna really.
You'll be in the
get it.
shade, right.
They'll be
A
in
lot
the
of
shade.
it will depend on the vegetation that gets saved at the bottom of the sheet, the gap between the building and the property. If all the pine trees are able to stay down there, or even, I would argue, if 5 of those pine trees stayed in that bottom area, that patio will be cold and damp and not fun.
Algae, the whole 9 yards.
Algae,
Yeah,
stuff growing on the backside of the building.
absolutely. Okay,
I have a question.
Lisa?
Yes, thank you. Could you just walk me through, from driving into the site to drop off and then to parking my car?
Yes.
I'll do the cursor you talk.
So you drive in the site, make the turn in, drive down the aisle, keep going, and then you will make a left turn there, and there's a drop-off aisle in front of the building. Drop off, and then if you're not requiring accessible space, well, if you're requiring an accessible space, you have the opportunity in 2 different sets of banks to park. If you're going to be parking in a standard space, you will go back out to the driveway and then go down probably that first aisle right there, unless you're going to try to get super close to
So
the
you would
door.
go up around the loop, you would continue traveling, where did we say this is north? Traveling north, go around that loop, come in, interact with traffic that is still coming in to get maybe to that same drop-off site you just left, cross over and find a spot.
Again, so the building didn't change between the 2 concepts, right? And because of the way that the building shape is, even if you put the door on the bottom side and you flip flipped it the other way, right? Then you need to put all the accessible parking down there, and the drop-off is on a curve. That's a bad deal. That's a non-starter. So we decided to make it so we could make a straight drop off like we did on the other concept. You don't want people parking on a curve like that if you can avoid it.
But you just don't have enough room to put the actual parking where you really need it, which is a continuation of the route you took to get in.
Yeah, so if you're gonna drop somebody off, or if you're gonna have an accessible tag, you're gonna go up into that route. If you're not gonna drop anybody off and you're not gonna use accessible parking, you will go down to the other parking spaces to the bottom of the sheet. Does that make sense?
Well, but you want to pull up and have your passenger on the right-hand side.
Which you do.
So, once you do that, once you turn into the building, you have no choice but to go up around the entire loop.
Yes.
Come back, intersect with traffic, and cross over again to
Yes.
parking. Okay. I don't like that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, once you get to the parking, then you gotta walk across all the islands to get to the
Yeah, yeah, that
There's a
sounds a
height.
little tough.
So, I want you guys to know that this plan was the result of a fair amount of effort. We didn't throw something bad together, we did our best. The reason we were so excited about the building moving toward the street is it gave a rare opportunity on this site to get the drop off on the right side of the entry drive. And that was one of the big things that we found when we first did this exercise during feasibility. We said, aha, we've hit something. Finally, we solved this drop-off problem, because every other configuration we had, the drop-off was on the wrong side of the car. And so we're coming back to that now with the building in the back side of the site, and this is one of the implications of it. It just makes it's more and more difficult. Anything is possible, but there are some solutions that come easier because they just simply work better. And you're beginning to see that, I think.
Yeah, I think your efforts were very well spent, because now we really can appreciate what you already had drawn for us prior to that.
And to be fair, I will make it clear that, so that there was absolutely no bias involved in the two concepts. I did one concept, and another one of my senior landscape architects who's been with the company for 25 years did this concept, and he and I both agreed that you could not do that concept. Probably better. I was shocked that it was that good, actually. So.
Dan, did you have a?
Yeah, is the shape of the building limiting us on the parking lot?
In this case, yes. And the reason for that is that the building was designed based on the direction of the committee to be in the other location and was optimized based on those criteria. And at the end of our last discussion, we said, okay, we'll put the building in the back of the site, but going to the back of the site will change the rules of the design, and we will have to redesign the building for that spot if we want to put it there. So step one was, can we circulate through the site at all and make it work to justify the redesign of the building, which would be rework? So, yes.
Well, I mean, we did the test fits, the original test fits in feasibility.
Yes.
The buildings were either 90 degree or they were linear.
Right.
And as we went through the initial designs, we I think we called it the knuckle. We put the knuckle in.
Yep.
And the knuckle helped, with that curve coming in,
Yep.
On the design for the front. But it seems to be limiting on the back.
I went back to the feasibility options in the first 4 slides of the presentation just to point this out again, because we were thinking about these things, but there's no reason everyone else knew about this, because this is what we do, not what you do. You'll see here in feasibility option A, you have to go around the entire parking lot to get your drop-off on the right side. So it's the same thing. Option B, you have to go through half the lot to get your drop-off on the right side, so you're driving through half the parking lot. Option C has it on the right side. This is the one we were so excited about. And option D also has it on the wrong side, so you have to go around the entire parking lot. And these are 4 very different building shapes. So I actually take my previous answer back, Dan, and stand corrected. No, the building does not limit us in that regard, because these other building shapes are having the same problem. Just trying to agree too much. I do that.
You don't have to agree with me,
Okay, fine.
just in the budget.
Of course.
So, could you go back to the 5 for me? The one, we didn't talk about the amenity changes between this option and the other option. There was a comment by a gentleman, I think he made the comment to put the pickleball courts up at the top.
Yeah.
So this option puts the pickleball courts at the top. I think that we could look at other options for the pickleball courts and the amenities, and they're not low priority, but they were intentionally placed next to certain things based on the building in the current plan. So,
I think I was thinking it'd give you more room down here to do whatever you wanna do with that space, and get it away, get all the recreation stuff up on the back.
that's fair.
We, over here in Glen Road, we put pickleball courts, so we cut right into the pine trees, which is nice, cause it's shaded, okay? And you don't get the heat, and you're not near the dumpster and all that good stuff. That's something I was nice.
More in the corner.
So this one has the pickleball course and the bocce and everything up towards the top, towards the open space. And it's away from the courtyard. To get to it from the building, you would obviously take a sidewalk here that goes.
I'm gonna give you a 3D.
Yeah, so it doesn't show the dumpsters up. I guess you can see them.
Yeah, the dumpsters are that little tan spot.
Yeah, so we should talk about that too. So now now to get to the dumpsters, you go right down. The trash truck goes right down the front of the building, and then when no cars are parked in that pull-off area, they head right into the dumpsters there, and then they circulate around there. So you got your closed dumpsters. Dumpsters are closed, but they're also right next to the pickleball courts, the bocce courts. And unfortunately, in this concept, we don't have as many opportunities and places to move that to because of the configuration and the angles in the parking lot. So the triangle is still available at the top. And then we would have to lose some parking or do something funky to come off of the bottom, which would be really close to the neighbors down there. So there's less flexibility with where to put the trash in this concept.
And then there's the contextuality.
Well, right. So it's the opposite in terms of context sensitivity, sharing the front yard feel when you drive down the road. It's a shopping plaza versus having a big house on the street, essentially. So when you drive down the road, and we've actually done some 3D work to evaluate what the differences would be, which aren't here, but shows you some of it. You drive down the road, you would see an empty parking space or a bunch of cars lined up, or in the other concept, you see the building. So the security parts of it, like we were talking about before, putting the building in the back of the site for building security, the actual security is probably the same, but the perceived security of it is less. People will inherently feel less safe with the building buried in the back of the site. I say buried in a negative tone because it is negative in that context. And it is much more difficult to see the backside of the building in this case because there's no vehicular movement around the backside of the building, and you can't even get to really one side to see down there. So it's completely blocked off from all sight lines in the back. And the patio would be completely isolated. So,
I'd also like to point out that the patio would feel a lot smaller because you'd be up against a bunch of neighbors' backyards. And so you can see that in the plan that you're really pushing the building into the corner of the site and really looking at other people's backyards, which right now you can, like John was saying, because the understory of these trees is empty, you can see right through the site now. So there's very little privacy of the space adjacent to the property line as compared to the previous option, which has a lot more space. Yes, there are neighbors down here, but only on one of the sides. It's not stuck in the corner. The other thing I wanted to point out is in option 4A, we talk about, I want to give an illustration of site contextual design. The front of the building right now on Main Street is about the same distance as St. Dorothy's is from the Main Street. And St. Dorothy's has a drop-off. And so we're saying trees and grass or trees and landscaping instead. So it will feel even a little bit further away just because it'll have a little bit of a buffer. But it's about in line with St. Dorothy's. In option 5, the building is aligned with the back of St. Dorothy's parking lot. So as you drive by, if you can, that spot where you can kind of see past St. Dorothy's all the way to the back of the parking lot, that would be the front of your building, and it would just be the whole parking lot in front of it. It's a very, very different perception of the building and the neighborhood.
George, I just want to say I want to thank Lee and John for working on this because I think these are some of the questions that are gonna come up on town meeting floor, and to say that,
Absolutely.
you know, this has been investigated, and to even have these options to show are gonna be important. So, I know I put you through a lot of work, with my request,
We're here for it.
but, you know, we have to anticipate that there are a lot of people that aren't watching the program or aren't coming to the meetings. And so I would rather have the work done and have the reason for the elimination and have an understanding of it so that it can be explained on town meeting floor.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, I appreciate that.
It was a great exercise.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed it.
I have another, I have another question for
Go
you.
ahead, Tracy.
So already tonight, we've heard a couple of comments about it being in the shade or being protected by some of the trees while they're playing pickleball. Does it make any sense at all to move that pickleball on option 4A closer to the corner, closer to the street where it's heavily shaded?
A lot of things can make sense. I'm going to jump in real quick, and I'm not going to play landscape architect, but I want to reiterate what John said. The location of the ball courts is flexible still.
Right.
Within a certain sphere of influence of the building. We want it to be convenient to the building, but that still gives us a number of spots to go.
Also, I would say the quantity, there might be more than two.
Absolutely.
It's a very active, you know.
And that's actually one of our next points of discussion, is to verify some assumptions that we made. Is it enough pickleball courts? Is the trash in the right spot? You know, those kinds of things. Shall we move on to the next? So if there's any questions on.
I have a comment, a question in the back.
Just a quick comment and a question. It looks, oh, I'm sorry, Deborah Russo, 902 Lord's Court. It looks to me like option 4A would clear traffic off of Main Street faster, too, because you've got cars going in that long way and then heading to the back. So you could have more cars, you know, rather than people looking for spaces up front. I just have a question. Has that site been surveyed? And if it hasn't, is that going to make a difference as to how things are laid out?
So, we have contracted with the surveyor. The surveyor has gone out and shot the meets and bounds of the perimeter and is currently working on matching the topography to the meets and bounds. I'm expecting the base survey any day. And will it change things? I'm sure it's possible, but it's a pretty flat site. I think we're gonna be in good shape one way or the other. Nothing that can't be handled with some simple grading.
Good question. Thanks, Tim.
George.
Oh, sorry, in the back.
John Toth, 54 Fiorenza Drive. Just a question on the input and output to the main road. It shows you got 36 feet or so right at the main street, but quickly, I don't know, maybe 75 feet, it drops down to 24. Now, most of the town is south of this location. And if we have a lot of people coming out with no control, and they're looking to go south, you're gonna have a backup on that lane going south. Pretty soon, you're gonna back up into an area that you're plugging up everybody getting out.
So I want to direct this over to Dan, because we're thinking about this as well.
I was just gonna say that the entrance to the site is gonna be studied with, you know, grading of traffic turns left, grading of traffic turns right, and we'll need a permit from the Mass Department of Transportation. And they're not gonna allow us to do anything that's gonna cause a problem. So that'll get worked out, how, the exact configuration. What they're showing in this phase of design is that the optimum spot to putting the entrance would be to tee it off the street that's opposite. So that's why it's almost to the St. Dorothy's line. So we know that that's where the direction that DOT is gonna direct us anyway, so rather than play around with it, we're queuing it up, but the exact configuration, will be part of a DOT permit.
And would there be any thought to traffic control devices?
Traffic control devices on a state road are 100% controlled by DOT. Even if we wanted it, the chances of us getting it are pretty slim, but if they think there's a necessity for it, they'll require it.
George, just a question along the lines of the egress there. And I don't, this is perhaps a better question for the fire chief to look at, but I know on another project that we're talking about in town, there's a strong desire to see 2 egress points so that fire apparatus can get in and out. And I haven't spoken to the chief about this issue, but with the single egress, is that going to be adequate, I guess?
The traffic study will begin to bear that out. We'll make recommendations on this, as well as our discussions with the fire chief. So that is we will explore it completely and make the best recommendation.
And 2 entrances to a state highway is another one of those things
Yeah.
that is pretty difficult to get
Okay.
from a Mass DOT standpoint, but not impossible. One of the things that all fire departments want is access to 3 sides.
Right.
On this building, they have 4. I think the fire department's actually gonna be quite pleased with the maneuverability of the parking lots in both designs, as well as access to the buildings.
You beat me to my question. I was gonna say on the side with the pickleball courts, would they be able to bring a piece of apparatus around?
We have anticipated reinforcing the ground, even if it's landscaped or has what appears to be a sidewalk. We can design it to the design standard. I think it's H11 or whatever it is of H20. Thank you. So close. So that we can.
I'll let you go down the path.
Thank you. Just enough rope.
I was wondering if there was a new standard H11.
No.
I was giving you the leash there.
Thank you. But that just means we'll reinforce the ground so that no matter what it looks like, it can actually hold a fire truck apparatus.
Sorry. Great, thank you.
I'm gonna put you in the B+ column.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
So I actually have if the public's done commenting, before we go to plans, this was a request by the committee to go down this exercise. I'm just curious if anyone has any comments on favorability of front or back, or do you want to?
My personal opinion, of course, this is just my personal opinion. I like option A, and I was for A. The only thing I was thinking of is trying to find the front of the building. When I drive by, I don't really see the front, but I think it kind of flows better. That's, again, my personal opinion. Looking at the traffic flow, there's not going to be any crossing intersection of other traffic, so that's just my opinion, and I would like to hear from any other committee members.
I mean, I just don't want to go. I don't want to go down a path if we're not happy with it, and speak up if we're not happy.
Well, I do like the fact that it lines up with St. Dorothy's aesthetic. It has some curb appeal, so I think it's good. Paul?
I have to agree with what my fellow committee member Diane said earlier. This extra work bears out the limitations to placing the building at the rear of the site. I wanted it at the rear of the site, I really did, but now looking at this, and especially with the 3D diagrams, I think it works better at the front of the site. And now we're armed at town meeting or Board of Selectmen or anybody else who wants to ask us the question, did you do all the legwork for this? And I feel confident in saying that we did. So my personal opinion, if we had to make a recommendation tonight, I would say I would go with 4A.
Jack, do you have any comment?
No, I think they did a great job with this 4A. It's the best option.
Most important, Terry?
I have to say, I was excited to see that there was that option of putting it back, just to see. One of my concerns was the fact that you had put so much energy into the fact of the sunlight as to going into the building, but when I saw you do the 3D, of 5, I was like, oh, that looks intriguing. But then after you really took the time to explain, the drop-off and you know, Teresa's question, about the parking and how that crossover's happening, 4A really wins. But again, I'm very happy that there was that option, because, you know, sometimes you do kind of second guess. And, you know, now I just feel more confident.
Teresa?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think having had the opportunity, and thank you for it, to look at option 5, you know, reinforces to me, which I believe was the better choice all along, is option 4A. I will say that, and I know this hopefully can be worked out, and maybe it's just my perception. I hope there's enough room in the back for unanticipated recreational uses that maybe have not even been invented yet. That's my own, truthfully, that's my only concern. I really like this plan. I think you did a great job.
Diane, excuse me.
The only thing also that was originally my concern with it being in the front is that, but I think, John, you had answered some of that, is that I do like the fact there's if we could possibly have it, the tree line or the shrub line or the fence line, because I really see that as an important piece as to not having everybody looking out into traffic at that end of the building, that it still keeps the beauty of the landscape. So originally that was a question, and as to going in back, that was the way, you know, maybe it could look nicer. But after, John, you kind of took that and kind of shared that piece too, that I think that was also a positive.
Diane?
Yeah, well, I've given this a lot of thought. Believe it or not here, I've got a computer going with the presentation, the PDF, and I'm also watching it on WCTV on another laptop, and then I'm talking to you on my laptop. What I don't see is when the pointer from Lee and that, but I'm following with my pointer on my computer here. So getting back to the question of which option, again, I'm going to say I'm glad that we did number 5, and I definitely understand what those issues are, and I would totally agree that especially the entranceway and the way they have to park, with cars coming in and crossing over, that definitely is not going to work. 4A, I would agree, seems to be about the best accessibility for the building and the parking. And I would also say that what Teresa said is very interesting, because I too think that, you know, as a pickleball player, it can be very noisy and annoying. However, now that I've said that, I think they would be better served at the back of the building. For a number of reasons. For one, what Jim Buckley said, also it would be more in the shade. But I don't think we would like to, and I'm including myself, sit out there in the back, especially if I were not a player, and you hear that pinging noise. It can become very annoying. And as a true pickleball player, it's just a fact of life. So that being said, 4A seems to be the better option with the lining up. I was not aware of that until it was pointed out with St. Dorothy's Church. Now, what I'm not feeling is that we are there yet with the design of the building, okay? everything else that you're talking about here in the flow of the traffic and the drop off and everything, is working great. It's just that, to me, I just don't think we're quite there yet with the design and the shape of this building. And I understand why it's made this way, but as you look at this, and maybe you're gonna do something differently with this long roof line, but once we get into the inside of this building and talking about spaces, it seemed like we had a lot of issues with where some of the spaces were gonna go. I don't know if that's because of the design of the building or something else. But, the short of it is gonna be that option 4A is better than 5. So I'm gonna go along with option 4A.
So Diane, can I ask Diane a question?
Sure.
Diane.
You're me.
Huh? So knowing that you might possibly wanna see the pickleball courts move to the rear, or what I call closer to the dog leg in the back, would you be willing to give up parking spaces to make it fit better, or to add a court? I'm just playing devil's advocate so that I know, so that the designers can walk away knowing that, you know, that extra 8 or 10 spots there where it flares to the right, if that was squared off, it would make that triangular space big enough for 2, probably 3 pickleball courts there.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
I would have a comment here. My comment would be,
I see where you made the curve there for parking, which is great, you know, for someone to come to play pickleball or whatever. Yeah, to give up some parking spaces, of course, I'm moving my mouse here. And I can't, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, I'm just happy I'm at this meeting anyway. Yeah, I mean, you may have to, but then again, there is a lot of land still behind there, and, you know, plantings and trees there that you've got there. I mean, I see that there's a bigger area there for the recreation. What I think would go better where these pickleball courts are and be served better, maybe the bocce would be fine there, but I think a pavilion type of thing, where they would be outside and sit under a pavilion, you know, which, if that's gonna be all sun, on the back there, they're gonna need some, you know, shading. Because I see the seniors in the summertime, they go down to the front of the swing green where the beautiful trees are, and they're underneath the shade. They're having their coffee or their lunch or whatever. So I'm thinking of, yes, I like the sun, but no one likes to be out there in the sun all the time. So I would like to see something more in a pavilion. You know, bocce courts can also have like a type of pergola over them to help them even with shade. But answering Dan's question, your question was, if you move the pickleball courts to the back, as I am suggesting, would I be willing to give up parking spaces for the pickleball courts? That was your question, correct,
Yes,
Dan?
that's correct.
Okay. I don't see any problem, you know, I guess final design will tell us, you know, what we're gonna really do for recreational issues here, but, you know, you know, it's hard for me to say. I just think there's a lot of land there to work with that. I don't think if you gave up some parking spaces, I really don't think you'd be giving up an awful lot.
can I interrupt for a second here? I think it was Mr. Buckley that was talking about, I think, when we were talking about moving it to the back, he was more referring to the back of the parking lot.
Yeah, cut trees.
Right,
Right.
that's
So
fine.
that would kind of, but I wouldn't give up that area because I believe there are other activities that might utilize
Right.
it. Burglar sounds fine.
Yeah.
You might have a victory garden over there where people, there could be lots of different things there.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't give that up, and I would not give up parking spots.
No.
I don't,
No.
I don't wanna take anybody's thunder, Dan. on this.
I just asked a simple question.
Dan got to it before I did, so good for you. We have it's worth noting, this parking plan has 170 spaces on it. The other plan had 165 on it. Those parking spaces, when I drew this, were sacrificial, pretty much, knowing that if the bocce court, if the pickleball courts ended up where they were on the other plan. So as designers, you look at these things and you go, somebody's gonna go, take my pickleball courts and put them up there, or somebody's gonna say, take this from here and put it over there, right? So those parking spaces over there I would argue you could get rid of all of them. And if you're down to 163 or 162 versus 165, nobody's gonna really wanna be there and walk to the building anyways, even, because those are the ones where you gotta kinda cross the island anyway, to the median to get to it. But ultimately, if we can get rid of some of those spaces up there, it might help, and I might tilt the angle of the parking lot down. There's some refinement. Let me have the opportunity of considering how to get pickleball courts up in that space, and we'll see what we can do.
And make sure you have some.
I
Is he
think
talking
that will
about
all
up
be
here?
probably worked out as we get
Or
closer
just-
to time to
Yeah, but
decide.
I think
Make
so.
sure you have room for a path around
But,
it.
It should be there.
Jeff,
Yeah,
yeah,
'cause I'm gonna-
do you wanna make a
but,
comment?
you
People
know,
driving might
I
be a
don't
pickleball
want,
court.
to lose track of just my
Look at
last
the traffic
comment.
coming in. They could go right into the
I
pickleball
really
court.
feel that we're not quite there yet
Yeah.
You know what I'm
with,
saying?
you know, the design of the building.
Diane, I don't mean to
And,
interrupt, but
it's,
Diane,
That's the next, that's the next slide, Diane.
wait for it.
The town manager would like to make a comment too.
It's coming.
Sure.
We have a slide on the plan. We're gonna go over the plan again.
Okay.
My comment is with regard to 4A, I think one of the values of that design is it provides a measure of consistency with the buildings that are around it, versus having, a parking lot being your introduction to the space. The other thing it does is with that green space in the when you come out into that patio area, there's for the people that are passing by, whether it's pedestrians or vehicular traffic, they can see activity going on there, as opposed to the other design where you've got a parking lot and all of the activity is relatively concealed.
Good point.
And certainly taking advantage of the sun is helpful in this design.
Absolutely.
A
Ken,
couple of questions.
could you state your name, please, sir?
Ken Clarkin, 39 Reno Road.
Thank you, sir.
One had to do with the roof line, and what I see in here, the depression in the middle. And both of these comments have to do with Ludlow, which was a previous senior center that you guys built. The HVAC system at Ludlow was up in the loft area, where you have the depression in the middle. Does that mean you have to have separate HVAC for each wing of the building? Or is that?
I defer to my project manager.
He'll defer to the project manager on this one, since he wasn't the designer of Ludlow. Ludlow has two separate systems for each wing. So, yes, you can walk between them, but they're separate anyhow.
Okay. And the other thing is, in Ludlow, they had a fence around the outside areas. If that winds up coming to pass from the street, you're gonna see a fence rather than activity. So why did they put in a fence around Ludlow?
The neighborhood in Ludlow is a little bit different than the neighborhoods here in Wilmington. And the fence is, more to keep out rather than for aesthetics or keeping sound out. It's to keep out undesirable residents.
But Ludlow has fence around the side that faces the industrial use and wraps around and connects to the dumpsters. And the street side, on both street sides, doesn't have a fence on it.
Yeah, but the outside areas is within the fenced area.
On
the
two
courtyard-
sides.
The courtyard pad, like the courtyard area?
The patio where
Yes.
you would, where I would assume you would put in a bocce or a pickleball would all be within the fenced area.
Right, so to Dan's point, that happened because we were trying to screen off a use next to us, not because we were doing it for an aesthetic reason or
Okay.
anything like that. It was a.
It was a security reason for some equipment and a future generator that the town wanted.
Site specific.
Site specific, use specific too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Lee, which actually brings up a good point here. I hadn't considered it. Are we gonna have a backup generator or anything for this building?
That has to still be decided as a part of the systems design discussion that'll be happening in our next meeting. Excellent segue.
Okay, thank
So
you.
this meeting is about site design, and our next meeting will be about systems design, where we'll have a presentation about the various systems that are assumed as best practices and best recommendations for this type of building in this specific location. And then we can talk about things like backup generators.
I just have one other comment.
Go ahead, Paul.
Terry, you guys put up a tent out there now? How useful is that for you guys?
How useful?
Yeah.
Oh, it was very useful. Actually, that was another situation due to COVID. It was a 20 by 40 tent, but everyone liked it very much, and in fact, it's coming back again this year. So it is used. It is used. But again, it was the reason that was brought there was due to COVID because we couldn't do functions inside the building.
But is that where, but that's where the thought from Diane, I think, was on the pavilion.
so
Was
what
related to the tents.
Right. So what happened was that due to COVID, people started using the Swain Green to really be able to sit down and be outside, and starting to see that. That's when I thought, let's get a tent to be able to and see if we can extend our sitting area as part of the building itself. So because of all this, more of an interest for outside has become stronger and stronger, and the need for outdoor activities, the need for outdoor sitting. There's been a whole wave to make sure that outside is just as important as the inside.
Is that something that our designers should keep in mind, like in your eyes, as we progress?
Yes.
A pavilion or a tent or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, when Lee, when we did meet this past week, I did share that, and I did show him the outside area where that tent was, and how our outside area really isn't a true usable outside area.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to make sure that he did see, to be able to have a true grasp as to why this, people are really asking for this and that strong need.
Great. I just want to cover all the bases, you know?
Yeah, I'm really looking
Thank you.
forward to presenting the second half of tonight's presentation, which will be a little bit more of show and tell than question and answer, if you will. But I'm excited about questions too, because we made some developments based on our conversation, Terry and my conversation, to the building design that I'm really excited about, that begins to talk about this as a holistic concept.
Great.
Did anybody from the public want to make comment as far as options 4A and options 5? I know I'm kind of reaching out, but we've all kind of spoke on this as 4A. Everybody's in agreement. Thank you. Lee, look it, you can move forward.
Thank you. And I don't mean to belabor it. Do you want to memorialize that with any kind of motion for the
I
committee?
was just gonna say
for-
that, do you wanna wait until we have a full committee, or?
Yeah, I think we'll wait on that. Plus, we don't know as we go through, we're gonna see some of these amenities, and if something changes, I don't wanna limit us or restrict us in any way.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for the feedback. I'm really glad we did the exercise as well. I think we all learned a lot from it internally and discussing it. I don't mean to cut your presentation short at all, John, but is there anything here that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about? The stormwater controls and snow management are it's not that they're not important, but I don't think they're a deciding factor right now. How do you feel?
Well, The one thing I do want to talk about, because it is an expensive discussion, is stormwater. And the town will need to, and the committee, if they've gone to other sites, which it sounds like they have, the Ludlow Senior Center actually started out, the Ludlow Senior Center was built with underground detention, so all the stormwater goes into drains in the grass swales and then goes underground. It was not originally designed that way. It was originally designed for all the water to go into swales that were in between the parking spaces, and they, as it was described to me, would become weedy messes. And that is a perception that, as a landscape architect, we try not to hang on to too much, but it's not also inaccurate, right? They get mowed once a year, basically, and they are not the residential appearance that most people traditionally look for when they do a site design. So through the process, we redesigned the underground, the whole drainage system at a substantial cost, on top of the whatever it was cost to redo this construction during construction. So it's important for me to provide you with visuals so you can understand the differences between the two, and then make a decision, unless you already know that the town wants to put everything underground and you don't want to see it. The caveat to that is we don't have the geotechnical and we don't have the survey, so I don't know what that means as it pertains to how high the building has to be on the site or how close to the existing ground it can be currently. So we don't know how high the groundwater table is, for example, and you need separation between those things. So we don't have complete flexibility. You know, there's a lot of unknowns right now, but that is just regarding the stormwater controls, that should be thought about and discussed. And I'm more than glad to provide visuals to help you make the decision. And they will be realistic visuals, not the pretty picture visuals that we all hope that they will be, so.
Jeff, could I ask you a question? I know at the high school, when we plant, everything is underground. That is, everything, everything goes under, so we don't have swales and things of that. But is that something that we should be discussing with planning conservation?
Yeah, I think certainly we want to get Valerie and probably Paul Aluni involved in. One of the things I was thinking about is, of course, you know, the building is nowhere near what we're talking about here, but with the Yentile Park, we have these areas, I guess I don't know whether they're technically called swales, but certainly areas where water can, right.
You know,
I wonder if that's something that we might consider. I mean, certainly one of the things we have to be mindful of in terms of landscaping is the impact on public works, because they're the ones that are going to be having to maintain this. But from my conversations with regard to the Yentile, you know, it hasn't been overly burdensome in terms of maintaining those areas.
Okay.
So we don't have any wetlands on this side that I'm aware of. I mean, it doesn't.
Not from original, Mark Aragoni walked it last year, and he didn't observe any wet areas. We definitely need to vet that out through the survey, but we might be in a good fortune that might be the only dry spot in town.
Wow.
Now you did it.
I mean, I didn't see any vegetation, but that doesn't mean that there isn't any there, but.
It's a wet place.
I don't know that conservation is gonna be our stop. It's probably gonna be
think so.
planning. Does planning do stormwater management, or do they defer to conservation?
No planning.
Planning,
Yes.
yeah. So, we'll vet that out.
So we have to meet, I do enough civil engineering, although I'm not the civil engineer. We do enough, we have minimum requirements for stormwater, first flush, storm intensity. These have to be met regardless of how we accomplish it. And what I'm getting at is there's two basic principles for accomplishing this. One of the ways is a $500,000 system that goes underground, and the other system is a less pretty above ground at grade solution where the water naturally goes into the ground. So, to put all the plastic and all the stone and everything underground is X, and it looks like X, and then to put it into swales or detention basins, as they're typically referred to, there's also water quality basins. There's a lot of the different versions of these above ground holes in the ground that get water. We try to make them nice as landscape architects, but whatever. I just wanted to point that out to consider, you know, do you want to look at naturalized looking areas that have water in them sometimes, or do you want to maximize your above ground space and pay to put your water into the ground by putting it onto the parking lot?
Thank you. That's a really good question. We can bring some visuals next time, because each time we bring up new content for you all to consider and review, we get feedback, we bring back refined visuals, or whatever you need to help make your decision. So we'll anticipate coming back with some diagrams and things to explain that better, because that's a very good decision.
Sorry for chewing out some.
No, that's fine. Also, into your snow management here, that was one of the reasons I was looking at 4A. Instead of having a huge snow pile down here in front, kind of like you guys see at Market Basket. And that's what you would see here, as opposed to maybe pushing it in the back.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to move into the building. Just so you know where I'm coming from on this, our previous discussion, we talked about developing option 4 into option 4A with some feedback based on your comments. And so that's what we've done here. This new plan is in your handout, and it's also on the screen, and Diane, you have this version from before as well, so this is all the same thing. I want to point out some key differences, but how things have remained substantially the same. One of the biggest things that we heard in our last meeting was that the multi-user bathrooms, or the multi-stall bathrooms, they were over by the admin, and they felt too far away from the main dining function. So the big move here that we did since last time is this green stripe of the entry sequence is exactly the same, but we put the women's room on one side of the cafe and the men's room on the other side of the cafe in order to get it as centralized in the building as possible and convenient to everyone as possible. You would enter these bathrooms off of the main lobby space through just a regular old 7-foot tall door, just like a regular sized door. It wouldn't be overly done, but it would be on either side of the cafe space, and the cafe maintains its position in the middle of the lobby. We need a better word than entry lobby lounge. We need something a little bit aspirational. Maybe foyer, maybe gallery, something. It's the main space of the building. This is the main area.
That sounds expensive.
We talked about the bathrooms. I would agree. I was thinking more of having the companion or some bathrooms near the dining area. I mean, I wasn't opposed where they were. Now I'm kind of looking at it and going, well, I'm in a lounge here, and I'm going to hear toilets. I'm going to hear flushing. So also in my dining room and my function area, and this is the main thing that I'm going to see when I walk into this building. It's going to be bathrooms.
I would hope that the main thing you see when you walk into the building is not the bathrooms, because the bathrooms they'll appear as a door, an open door on the wall, but there'll be a taller area in the middle where the cafe is, and the volume of the room that you're in itself is even taller than that. And there's glass at either end, and there's the admin area that's open on the corner. So it's a balancing act. The idea is to conceal them in plain sight, basically, so that they are where they need to be and convenient to the most people, but not obtrusive.
One of the things I was impressed by over at Ludlow, it was their, I'll call it airport style,
Yep.
where you didn't have to deal with a door.
That's what
so
this
if
is.
you were in a walker or you
Yeah.
needed to.
He's indicating that.
That's what
It's
this
an
is.
opening.
He's calling it a door, but it's really an opening.
So it's an opening,
an
so
opening.
again, now you're gonna hear this. I'm just, I'm gonna be sitting in the lounge after I get my cup of coffee, reading the paper, and this is what, just my personal opinion.
I hear you. And it's a
Your
bit of a
hearing won't be
challenge.
good by the time you're sitting in that lounge.
What's that? What's that, Paul?
You won't hear it anyways. I won't be able to hear it
It's not
either.
that far away.
It's me and you, don't worry.
Spicy here.
All are fun.
So this is one of the moves that we did. We can talk about whether this location makes sense. It does do a bunch of really good things for us. So let's just suspend the bathroom discussion temporarily. Bathroom humor. It always works.
Hold.
So, when we pull the bathrooms out of the activities wing, it means the medical suite and the admin suite, the small meeting room, and the classroom / large meeting room are all right next to each other around this new square node that we've created. It has a companion toilet as well there. And based on the walkthrough that we did this last week with Terry, having the medical suite adjacent to a companion toilet and with some area directly outside of that office space, it becomes an area that serves a bunch of functions all at once. And so that's what that group of areas.
Again, one more question, I don't want to monopolize,
Please.
but now, medical suite. And now I'm looking over here, I see medical equipment way over in the corner near the kitchen.
Yes, currently it's in a shed in the parking lot. So we're bringing it inside the building,
Something different.
but this is not medical equipment that you're going to use in the medical suite. They just happen to share the word medical. This is the surplus medical equipment that is provided to the community.
Okay, storage for your additional stuff on top.
Right, so that, like he's saying, that's completely different. You know how in our shed, we have the walkers, the commodes,
Okay.
and that, so that's why
I
that's
just
way
wanted
over
to make
there.
sure
Yeah.
that the people from the medical suite aren't going over to here. for
No,
their supplies.
no.
We talked about that when we met, and they're deliberately put it at, they're both inside the building, which is a huge advantage compared to what it is now. And then we talked about the necessity for those two things to be near each other, and they aren't, it isn't really necessary.
Okay.
All right, so moving along, we've.
Can I just ask a question?
Please.
Can I?
Oh, of course.
Sorry.
I don't want to ask more.
So my question to you is, there's two companion bathrooms side to side. My thought is, if it would be wonderful if have one there, but one located maybe further down as to the, like
Swap
the
the janitor.
exercise.
Swap the janitor over.
Correct.
Yeah. There's no problem with that whatsoever. It's a great suggestion, and I'm glad we're at that level of granularity because it means we're getting more things right. So yes, I think having the one off of the medical suite, whether it's directly off the medical suite like it is now, or if it's just off of the same entrance area, that serves its purpose. And then we can move the other one down to where approximately the janitor's closet is and just trade places and get a better distribution.
I have a comment. I thought at the last meeting that we talked about taking the lounge wall and bringing it out so that it was flush with the two corners of the building
We
to
talked about-
maximize that interior.
We talked about it as an option, and I'll walk you through where that has gone in the exterior and interior design balance as we get further into this.
Okay.
It is a balance between maximizing the interior lounge space and making a strong connection to the exterior patio space as a transition to an exterior space that is still a usable room within the building. And I'll show you what I mean.
Okay.
Okay. I have a question in the back.
Ken Clarkin, 39 Reno Road. As this design has developed, you started with the block diagrams, went to the adjacency, and then to summary of spaces. The first two had two bathrooms. And actually, in the adjacency, I think it was a companion bathroom and a unisex, and that became two companions. Then, when you go to the summary of spaces, there was three companion bathrooms. So I'm wondering, what's the governing document for this?
It's actually the Mass Plumbing Code, and we're far exceeding that as it is now based on the occupancy of the building. But we know since it's a senior center, we will have more companion bathrooms than you'd normally be required by the Mass Plumbing Code. And we're still working out exactly the best placement for them, as you can hear in this discussion, to get them proximate to all of our uses.
But in the summary of spaces, are there two, are there gonna be two in the building or three? And what brings that up is, in the summary of spaces, the library was 120 square feet, and in the adjacency, the library was 75. So I'm wondering, what's the governing document for what's in these?
So the summary of spaces is the amount of space needed for each of the uses. So the library, if you look on the drawing, you'll see that the recreation and library are one word, because it's a multitude of spaces. They haven't gotten into that level of detail yet. With regard to the companion toilets, it's clear he's showing two and not three. but he's also showing more fixtures in men's and women's probably than we had in the original designs. So it's the fixture count that governs, as well as, you know, the placement and Terry's gonna know better than anybody where those companion bathrooms are gonna need to go and whether we need a third one. We certainly have the ability to squeeze a lot of things in this floor plate. Nothing's developed. It's really just basic spaces.
Okay, but is it still the same overall dimension?
Size of the building equals the size of the building currently equals this total space in the space summary,
Okay,
within a few feet.
okay. Thank you.
Did I say that okay?
That's perfect.
I'm stuck on granularity.
You like
I'm
that?
trying to figure, I gotta go to my MCAS book.
I try to give you everything.
Also in the back.
At one point, we had talked about being able to close off part of the building when there's major function. Are you going to have to close off all the companion bathrooms?
It's not the intention. Whether we compartmentalize the building so that part of it kind of goes dark at night when there's another major function or not, we're still figuring out how that might happen. And we'll make sure that the part of the building that remains open is fully serviced by all of the basic needs. Additional to this is also a bathroom and shower in the kitchen that's not illustrated yet. And there's also a potential for a toilet within the admin suite. So we're still putting in smaller and smaller pieces as we move through and making sure everything works.
What's your thought on it?
So I do want to talk about the airport bathrooms too, if I can.
Well, I think Terry has a comment too.
But
I'd add, after you finish, Dan, I'd
Yeah.
like to.
You can't, I don't recall that you can hear them in the hallway in Ludlow, and it's an open door. But it also, to be truthful, it will depend on the type of fixture that's chosen and the type of fixture we get from the file sub-bid plumbing contractor. So there are some concerns with regard to noise with the flushometer.
So if I remember correctly, and I could be wrongly, on our last meeting, at one point, when we were talking about those bathrooms, that meeting room, that meeting classroom, that we were kind of questioning as to, you know, having the bathrooms in that space so that, because someone had made the comment that the first thing that people do when they come into a senior center is they need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Yes, you did, Deb. So, so my thought is though, that they can always, for that bathroom, you can honestly enter in that yellow area. And if people are concerned, if the concern with hearing the bathrooms, or, excuse me, for saying so, but smelling the bathrooms, that might be, it's just a little concerning.
Yeah.
That they're right there, because you put so much energy and effort to make sure that cafe and everything is looking nice, that I would hate to see that all that thought and everything that's gone into that lobby, that the bathroom, maybe not right away, but as years go on, take away from it.
I appreciate that very much.
Kind of my thought too.
I agree with you, and that's where they were for quite a while. And we will try harder. I was having a really hard time, my team and I, getting this to work for us because bathrooms have very strict space requirements of clear floor areas for toilets and sinks and turnarounds and wheelchairs, and you know, these are optimized. Believe it or not, it looks like they're very big, but they're actually optimized for their use. And you can't make them much smaller. You can't squeeze them. So they don't work well in that inside corner. We will try harder because I agree with you. I do think that's a better spot.
I know Diane wanted to comment too before we go to you, Dan.
I brought this up to George the first time I saw this, and it came out. And I really can't see the bathrooms there at all. I think that when you come into the building, everything that Terry said is 100% correct. I think the issue of, I know that people, when they come into a building, the first thing they ask is, where are your restrooms, and things. But, her main room there is that beautiful dining room and function room. And now I'm gonna throw something out here, to you, Lee, and, you know, if you took those bathrooms out of there, maybe those are storage areas for whatever, the tables, the chairs, you know, I don't know, whatever. But I really think that the cafe, being in the middle there, okay, I would like to see that cafe closer to the lounge. Because I think that a pair of double doors or an archway, whatever is gonna be placed there, to emphasize the dining and function room there, would be much better of a benefit than two side doors. I think a big main entrance into your dining room with some lovely doors or whatever you're gonna have. But I would like to see that cafe moved closer, if there was some way to move it down the other end, closer to the lounge area. Because when Terry and I saw the Ludlow, I mean, Ludlow was really a cafe. It had the tables and everything. Now we have sort of a combination lounge, area. But, so that's one thing. I also agree, and you said this may not be a problem, of also, separating the companion bathrooms. I don't think they need to be side by side. I think that's a good idea to have one at one end of the building and one at the other. But maybe we go back to our original plan of where the bathrooms were to begin with, and kind of work that around. But to have them right off the lobby here, especially, you know, when you come in the front door and, you know, I just think that especially where it has to be opened like that, the airport style opened, I think their lobby, they would be much better off having some presence in that lobby, foyer or whatever, that would have a nicer design effect than the two openings for the bathrooms. So my is put your thinking cap on and go back to the drawing board again.
No, thank you, I appreciate that,
Companions up
and,
here?
I appreciate your honesty.
It's just so
It's
much
okay to say
smaller.
that it's not there yet.
Dan, do you wanna make,
So, this goes back to my original comment of the evening was, is the shape of the building restricting what we can do? And are we confining ourselves because we have the knuckle and not a 90-degree turn or a straight, building? And should we take a look at that, or do we, you know, cause I have to be honest, I kinda like the shape of the building, and I think it flows great with the site, 4A, but it is creating, some confusion, in between the two main groups of spaces. And I'm wondering if, you know, there's a way we can solve that, maybe with maybe a little more detail, maybe a blow-up of the lobby, or something that will get everyone comfortable with where we're going. I kinda understand where Lee's going when he starts talking in the third dimension of the space, that we can't see in this two-dimensional plan. But moving the bathrooms across the hall, we get back to that original question of restriction again, because of the knuckle. So
But wasn't part of the premise of the need for this design to capture the sun coming through that green area there that,
Right.
and so if it was a 90-degree, I don't know, I suppose unless the,
and the dining area, so we could have some doors that could come out onto that.
I'm not suggesting he has to go redesign the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm rhetorically, I guess, asking whether, you know.
Well, there are a lot of benefits to it, I mean, being unique, obviously, plus the parking, I mean, the
Right.
way everything has come out.
Right.
And
The
to the
drop-off,
manager's
the
point,
drop-off too.
right, the
Drop-off,
drop-off
right.
too, the southern exposure for the terrace, the throughway, and the dining area. So, I mean, there's a lot to that. But maybe, I mean,
So
I
I
leave
have
it
the
to the
three-dimensional
design.
model in front of me, and it's rather rudimentary, and I do think it'll be more confusing than helpful, so I'm not sharing it just yet. And so I'm flying around looking at it, and hearing
There's
what
no
you're saying.
generality to it.
I accept the challenge, as I have before, on a variety of things, to do a better fit with the bathroom and the entry sequence, because I agree with you, Dan, and you, George. There's a lot going on that's good in this plan.
Right.
And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. We came up with this together. So there's a lot good going on, and I think we can tune it. I don't think we need to throw out the.
You're almost
instrument
there. Yeah.
We're almost there.
Well, I like Diane's
I'd like to ask
comments.
a question, though. I think what Dan's original question was very, very good. And that is the design of this building causing us, some problems in situating where these spaces need to go? So and maybe that's the shape of the building versus an L shape building. So I know that this burden is on you, Lee, to figure these all out, where these puzzle pieces are gonna go, these blocks of spaces. And I think that's an excellent question, that Dan asked, because that's kind of been going on my mind since this has been sent out. And now that we're beginning to see some of these things, no, we don't want the bathrooms there, we thought we did, put them back, maybe move this over, push the lounge out, I'm wondering if it's, I understand you came up with this design of this building, but is it causing us more headaches and maybe a little more reshaping or a more standard
There's some good points to
L-shaped
this.
design building would
I'm gonna go to
benefit
Teresa
us
after this.
better?
I know Teresa
You
has
know?
a comment.
I don't know.
I-
I don't know, you're the,
Yeah, I want to respond to you, Diane, but I'll save my
We have a
response because I
committee
want to hear
member.
Teresa.
Teresa.
Oh, okay, well, it's
Tracy.
not that earth-shattering, but it's
could
back
be.
to the bathrooms.
Help me.
So I'm just looking at this and just wondering, I do like Diane's idea about the larger entryway, one entryway, and pushing the cafe down to really more where you would have more of a permanent sitting area. What about if we put one companion in the space that you currently have, the women's restroom?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like at the entry area, it's kind of a busy area, a functional area, and not a resting area. Put another one at the end, down where you have the exercise equipment, somewhere down that end of the building, and then squeeze in, as best you can, into the meeting and class area that we talked about last meeting, and square that off, so where the recreation comes out in a pie shape and takes that.
Yep.
If we square that off, I don't know if that would help
I'm taking notes on my PDF
fit
version of this right now.
the male and the female restrooms in that section.
I think you kind of have the idea, Lee, what
I do,
we're talking
And
about, so.
I want to respond to both of your comments and say that this is normal. The challenges we're having now, getting the final layout fit into the building, is an absolutely normal part of the design process. I don't want this to seem too easy, and I don't want to seem too hard, but what happens is generally you come up with an idea you really like that seems to satisfy most of the criteria, and you say, all right, this is great, let's develop it. And then you start working on it, and almost everything fits, and there's a couple things that present a problem. And you work on those, and you work on those, and you work on those until you're happy, and then you move on to the next thing, and you'll find something else that presents a problem. It doesn't mean that it's going badly, it actually means that it's a natural part of the process. And it means that we're focusing on things that are important to us, and that are essential for the building's function. And so I don't take this as negative, and I don't take it as go back to the drawing board, start all over. I take it as that we're talking about the things we need to talk about to get the building to where it needs to be.
I also want to comment, the fact that the committee members are getting the plans 2 days ahead of time.
Is great.
Is great,
Oh, my
because you
goodness.
guys are asking great questions that you wouldn't have seen if we had just dropped it on you. And you would have been, you'll be mulling for 2 weeks
of what you didn't get to say.
Right.
So this has been a really, really productive meeting on moving us forward on a lot of directions. I'm actually really psyched up about this meeting.
Yeah, yeah. I think that everything that Lee has said is absolutely right. It doesn't mean that everything is wrong. It just means that we have to work a little bit harder. And when I say we're not quite there yet with the design, that's what I mean, Lee. I think we need more tweaking, and we need to make these spaces work. And whether that is turning one wing a little bit more than the other, or lengthening it. I mean, you're the architect, but the questions are, having the open bathrooms and all this other that we're gonna have. But I do have one other question I would like to ask about the admin area too.
Sorry, before you do, the admin
Yeah.
area is not designed. It's currently just a pink blob on the page that has a couple of lines indicating where walls might go. So I'm not telling you not to ask your question, but right now it's designed to have standard office size spaces, and it's open at the entry to have a check-in desk. That's all it's gonna do, admin.
All right, then I'll move on then to my second question. Because all right, now, towards the end of the building, you have the arts and crafts room, which is going to be a good-sized room.
Yeah.
And in between, you have excuse me, I have to look at my computer now, the workshop,
Yes.
okay, which appears to be long and narrow, and behind the workshop, that's storage behind it, and, would it be better to just flip that and the workshop, which could be noisy and everything, you're gonna have to do a lot of soundproofing maybe around that, put the workshop more on the end of the building?
No.
No?
No.
That was easy.
No?
It was on the end of the building before, and
It was.
the workshop, yeah, I'm telling you, this was an intermediate step that you didn't see. The workshop was on the end of the building, and next to it, the storage room is a very similar size to the workshop, and it will be used by both the arts room and the workshop. By doing that, you've cut an entire wall of light out of the art space. And so I'm not that mean to artists. I would like the art space to have as many windows as possible. So by flipping them, the art room gets better quality light. And you see from the street activity inside that room as you drive by.
Can I, on the point of the workshop, I just want to ask Terry a question. What do you really see this as, and are they going to build anything that is going to need to have accessibility to get out of that room, I don't.
By getting out of that room.
So if it's a workshop and they're constructing something or making some bookshelf, they're going to be able to get it out of there, or is that something?
Well, it's hard for me to tell by the shape of this room right now. The goal is, we did have a workshop. We had one in our basement. To get into the ups and down those stairs was way too hazardous. And actually, the machinery all rusted out because of the moisture downstairs. So there was a need. People did enjoy that very much. But we haven't had it in quite a while. So I think it's hard for me to truly answer until we get to see the fine tuning of that.
My only thought is maybe we could move that across where the exercise equipment is, because I don't know if exercise equipment, is that a storage type of spot as opposed to the fitness, and we move this in? I'm just trying to think of the people that might be using this workshop. And
So, I look at the workshop as something that doesn't need exterior light,
Right.
where exercise will.
okay.
And furthermore, it's not a design space, it's a placeholder, just like all the other spaces. And,
All right.
I want to give Lee a pass on this.
Thank you.
I mean,
Okay.
all right. He's just not there yet.
We just have the question,
Yeah.
so that's what we're doing.
No, thank you. Yeah, we will, we'll dig into this further. Thank you.
Absolutely. In the back.
George?
Hi, I'm Deborah Rousseau, don't know.
Bless you.
So I'd just kind of like to make a comment about it.
God bless you.
Bless you.
Bathrooms. And I have to say, I get what you're saying, George, about sitting in the lounge and hearing noise. But, if I recall, the dining and function room, is gonna be used for all kinds of things, and it's gonna have the most people there.
Yes.
Probably, I don't know, what did I hear, dining and dancing, and just all kinds of stuff going on. So it seems to me that the bigger bathrooms should actually be there. What I'm wondering is, why can't this be reconfigured a little bit so that the men's room and the women's room are side by side, and the cafe moves down where it says cafe to where the lounge is. So you don't actually, you're not sitting across from the bathroom when you're in the lounge. But those times when the dining and function room needs to be locked off, or not the dining and function room, but the other part needs to be locked off, and the dining and function room used exclusively for that night's entertainment or whatever, that people have access to the bathrooms that have the most stalls, because there's gonna be more people that way. And I just have a really strong feeling that, an exceptional architect could figure out a way
Absolutely.
to make it
Yeah.
really nice, so
Yep.
We
that
have-
not
we-
gross
Right.
out.
We wanted to take a look.
For one thing, the other thing too is.
I'm glad she's not picking on the
trust me,
OPM.
A lot of seniors, when they, make the walk from the parking lot into the senior center, they're gonna wanna use the bathroom. And when they leave the senior center, that's gonna be one of the last things they do too. And lots of times they go with their friends. So now you've got the room that has the more stalls, you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Not to disagree with you, Diane, but I do, sorry.
All right.
For those reasons.
Lee's gonna take a good look at this anyway. I'm gonna go to committee member.
Not to pile on Lee.
Please.
I want to go back to that bathroom and then men's room and the whole thing.
That's what we're here for.
So I just want to see a synergy between that cafe,
Yeah.
that lounge, that patio, and if we can get that men's room out of there, we can get more windows in the dining room.
So you might have seen John did a sketch on my notebook.
I didn't see it. I was that good.
He's been dying
I've been
over here.
thinking about this, and I just haven't.
He's like, when are you going to tell him about the thing I drew? It's a really good idea, and I wanted to save it as a surprise for next time.
Okay.
All right.
But
I
We've
just
had-
want-
we've
we
had
have
plenty of
such a-
basketball conversation.
We have such a great opportunity with this space. I want to maximize this opportunity with this space, and the potential is huge.
I think you're all where I am on seeing that this green spot in the middle of our plan is the point of the building.
Yeah.
It's going to be it'll be the most special place in the building.
Yep.
It will be the place that'll feel like you've arrived there. It'll be the place you'll want to hang out. It'll have the things that you go there for. That might be the only place you go. You grab a cup of coffee, hang out, use the bathroom apparently, and then leave. That could happen. So, we'll put some more energy into it. Okay, I want to move. Let's take a deep breath. All right. I want to share with you guys some design inspiration that I shared with Terry when we got together. This is where we're pulling some of the massing ideas for the outside of the building and some of the beginnings of what we call architecture with a capital A, what it looks like from the outside. And this is a very important topic because it gives the personality of the building. So the first image is the Tabernacle Silver Lake Hall, which I understand from our discussion, Terry, was a dance hall, of which there were a number of these. It was the dance hall.
Alan Cole? Is that the old Alan Cole building? It was is over the line?
That's a little before my time, Paul.
Okay.
So one of the things,
1800.
so we got this from the Historic Society, or one of the various historic societies here in Wilmington. What's exciting about this space is it's one of the larger buildings in town, to be totally honest with you, and we're building one of the larger buildings in town for public use. It also has a really strong feeling similar to the town hall site here, where and also St. Dorothy's, where you have the tall pine trees and then the building sitting in the clearing of the tall pine trees. And so it has that summer camp feeling, that feeling of going away to do something special. And I heard some interesting stories about being at the end of the train line, and also that Wilmington was a place for recreation, and we'll just keep it on the up and up there. The next image that was brought up that was really interesting, and this captured Grant's attention, Grant on my team. He said, what about this? This patio looks amazing, and it looks like a place you'd go in the summer and hang out, and there are activities that happen there. So we've been trying to dig up. It says Camp Something in white letters in the middle of the grass. I went into Photoshop and tried to maximize this. Can't really make out the words.
Camp Bliss?
Camp Bliss, maybe? And so we're still working on this, but this is kind of the ethos of the thing we're looking for. It's a garden space. It's a space that spills from the inside into the outside. It's a place to relax, entertain, get together, and it has that kind of look and feel of a summer camp. So those are some historic references. Now we're going to go to some more contemporary references. This is a rendering done by the Genesis Studios. They do a bunch of renderings and architectural design. And I thought it captured, it's for a completely different place, but it had a look and feel about it that was really exciting. That open roof form, the tall windows, the patios and the steps and the trees outside reminded me very much of things that we might be able to do on this site, and the way that the building encloses nature. The next images are from the Marian Thompson group, and Diane, I have to beg your forgiveness. You don't have these images, and I will send you a PDF. The next two images are from the Marian Thompson architects. This is actually a school, but that's kind of beside the point because the building has a very contemporary yet traditional feel about it. It has standing seam roofs and wood siding and white trimmed windows, but it has a very open and bright feeling. And this is something that I've always been very attracted to as any space could be, but particularly a space for the public. And so I see this as very inviting and exciting. And then finally, I think this is finally, a couple of images. Another one from Marian Thompson. The one on the left is the new Walden Pond Visitor Center. So if you've been over to Walden Pond recently, this is the new visitor center just across the street. It's all mass timber, so CLT, cross-laminated timber, and glue-lam timber. So it's completely a wood-framed building in a very kind of traditional style of pieces, but in a very contemporary interpretation. And then the image on the right is of a Japanese architect, Kengo Kuma, who deals with traditional architecture as well as contemporary architecture in a way that is very evocative of wood frame and the lightness that we've seen in some of the other images. So to mesh these together is where, oh, there's one more. Charles Rose, an architect out of Cambridge, did this project. This is a performing arts center in the South. I think it's in South Carolina maybe. And it similarly has asymmetrical roofs, light, tall windows, and plenty of exterior space that's embraced by the architecture. So taking cues from each of these things, like the best things like the asymmetrical roof or the way the windows play or the way the gesture of the building sits, we began to sculpt the building more. The building, as you saw that we have here in option 4A, is a very simple plan. It's just a straight rectangular bar that's been bent in the middle with an opening through it. And the drawback to very simple building shapes is they can have very boring appearances from the outside. It can just be a long, monotonous roof. So to combat that, we've tilted the roofs and moved them around in a very simple way to give it a playful and kind of informal atmosphere. We're looking at the entrance side where you see this little person standing here in the illustration. And this entrance would have glass at the entry level with the vestibule, but then glass up above as well to let light in from the top of that shared space. And then off to the left, you see this patio area is in front of the dining area. So those tall windows are up in the dining area, so they let light in from the top. There'll be more windows. This is extremely preliminary. There'll be lots more windows. But this is some of the biggest moves are illustrated here with this drop-off area and where the grab-and-go pickup might be off of the side of the cafe space. I'm going to flip around to the other side, and then this is the side facing the street. Street's kind of behind us in this view. And similarly, that low roof extends around to the front side facing the landscaped area. So this low roof in the front with the high windows in the back and that deeper recess for the terrace is trying to pull on that previous image. I'm going to back up real quick. This one right here with the high roof, with the columns, and the low roof with a shade in the front. This is where that inspiration came from. How can we get this attached to our building? And we did that by pulling it across the front of the building and incorporating the ideas of the pergola or the pavilion into the building itself, so that the building offers that shade and that protection, that oversized porch for people to enjoy and be protected by the sun, from the sun in the summer, or just look out over in the winter. I think that's it for now. I have another little illustration, but I'm interested in comments.
Is that page 25 that you were on?
This is page 25, yes.
Yeah, option 4A, building volume.
Yes,
Okay, that's the last one you were talking about.
yes.
Right. Paul?
I just want to see windows in the dining area, ground level windows.
Yeah.
And especially if we have that patio area there, and it kind of visually will connect all those areas.
Yes,
you know,
and you'll notice on the left side, there's no windows in the activity rooms at all.
Right.
We just haven't got
Okay,
there yet.
okay. I
Yep.
just
They
wanna
may,
make sure.
may even be doors or something
Yes.
that can open up.
Yes,
you know.
I want all these too, and I'm drawing as fast as I can with my team.
Okay.
And we wanted to give you a
I
complete
do like what
presentation.
you did with the roof line
Thank you.
again, because I know I had some of the conversation about flat roofs and things with you previously, and I do like the way you've kind of had it line up to the other roof. Dan?
So, when I look at this, I of course look at it from a financial standpoint.
Yep.
And I'm croaking. But the reality of the matter is, this is a first pass at really a shape of the building.
Yes.
It's not developed, you know. Paul will get a better feel for solid and void with glass in it. But the real question that's really before you is, do you want to go contemporary? Do you want to go semi-contemporary, or do you want to go traditional? And I really think that's the question. I think that's really the question, because this can't be traditional, really. I mean, it's going to be hard to make this traditional.
I don't think the shape, the bend, the way we had it, I don't think that's traditional at all. You know, I mean, if it was L-shaped,
Well,
maybe.
I'm not throwing a rock at contemporary. I just want you to know that we're going down a path.
Yep.
And be conscious of it. And it's okay to go down this path, because this is going to be a stunning building. You can tell already, just from the volume, it's gonna be a stunning building. I'm having heart palpitations over, you know, trapezoidal windows that, you know, you have to replace when a kid throws a rock through.
We'll put them up high.
So, you know, where you gonna go get that window? Home Depot? I don't think so.
That's true of
So-
the whole building though, Dan.
So I know, but you need to start thinking in context of what you really want this to look like. And I think the world's at your feet. You can really go anywhere. And I think he has shown you some really exciting opportunities.
Well, am I on? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
I did mute myself there for a moment. What you're saying, Dan, is very important, and I think it deserves a lot of thoughtfulness. You know, Paul's talking here about windows, and I love transom windows on the top. But I like traditional, and I love hip roofs. I was looking at a senior center online, and I couldn't believe what they did with it. They had some eyebrow windows in there. Versus, I get where this came from. From all that preliminary architectural work, I get where this came from. To me, this is a very modernistic looking building. And I'm a traditional, I tend to go more the traditional route. Now, I like more traditional with windows, with mullions in them, and transom windows on the top, and I like different things on the roof to break it up. But then again, that's kind of like where I'm coming from. I agree with what Dan says, that, you know, the slant windows and things like that. We want to think also in terms of keeping up this building and having it, fairly easy from a maintenance standpoint. But, that long, long roof line, I'm just not there yet with that.
Well, I think you're gonna have that long roof line with whatever you have. You might be able to break it up with shed dormers or different features. I mean, and I'm not saying he can't do that. I think my question is, stylistically, which direction do we wanna go? Or do we wanna, is it possible that we can look at maybe a more traditional and a less traditional at the same time? And then I'm not trying to create work for you, Lee, but
Are you
this
sure?
is a great example of why you have a public forum.
Yeah.
Is when you get to this point where you have a couple of developed facades and your floor plan, you want to get the input, because it's the voters that are going to vote for this. And if they don't like the way it looks, it's not going to help. But if they love the way it looks, it's going to help. And I'm not saying that they're not going to love this. They may look at this and go, wow, Wilmington's gone into the future and really caring about the seniors. I don't know. I'm just telling you that this is a really important decision that we need to think about, not just run through. I want us to really think about what you want this building to look like before we step too far ahead.
Right. I would agree with what you're saying, Dan. And
That's twice tonight you're agreeing with me, Diane. I'm scared.
maybe what Lee needs to do is maybe do some front and side elevations. And to give us a real feel of what this building is going to look like. By looking at this, I don't get that feeling that I know what this building's going to look like.
So,
To me, it's a lot of roof lines, a very modernistic feel, but I think maybe with, and I don't know if it's the software that you work with or what. I gotta tell you, there are presentations out there that show how it works into the landscape of the building and the elevations and everything.
But we're not there
All
yet.
right.
In fairness to Lee,
Go
we're
ahead,
not.
Lee, I know you want to say something, so hold on, Diane.
you've made a lot of really good points, and I really appreciate your feedback. When we talk about the maintenance and durability of the building, we're not talking yet of what the building's made out of. And that will feed into it substantially. And as far as the look and form of the building and, elevations of the different sides, I want that too. It's gonna take a minute. Design is an iterative process to get something that we're really happy with. And when Terry and I met, I showed her some of the how the sausage gets made with these models that you're seeing. And there were 8 versions of really ugly buildings that I threw away that were in the background. There were 3 other versions of this today. There were 5 from the night before when I stayed up too late. So we're chipping away to get to a place where it looks good, and that I want to present this because we're really proud of our work that we're doing at Dietz. And it takes a long time to come up with windows that work well, to get the roof working with the windows. So it's an iterative process, and it takes a long time, like August, which is what our schedule has. And so when we get through schematic design, you will have elevations of the entire building. You'll have windows and doors. There'll be materials selected, basic colors associated with those materials. And you'll be at a place where you, I hope, really love this building and are excited by it as well. And I'm not asking you to just trust me, because that's not how the process works. But right now, it's a white building because none of those things have been selected. What we have so far are the indications of the form of the building. How much of it is roof and the shape, and how kind of contemporary or traditional it looks. And believe it or not, this is actually riding the line of, I'm taking a lot of traditional cues with the overhangs of the roof, the indication of standing seam, the porch, and the play of the forms with each other are taking cues from buildings in the area and buildings that have been here before. So instead of trust me, let's work together over another couple of weeks and add some more detail if you guys feel like this is the right direction to go, and we'll develop it together, and we'll find a place that we're really excited about.
Can I just ask you, Lee, One question that Dan asked you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
With the two different roof lines
Yeah.
there, that would cause
No.
a lot of problems, of leakage
Yeah.
and whatever, that Dan was, rather than the roofs connecting up. You have right there where the entryway is, that roof line is lower. Was that taken into consideration?
Yes.
Have we
Yes.
worked on that?
Yes. Dan's question was about there being a flat roof. And I'm not going to bring up the image because it'll take some digging and it will make
Yeah,
me
no,
make me
I
look bad.
remember what-
But
yeah.
there was a flat roof that was between these two sloping roofs. And we put a lot of effort into changing both the roof over the dining area and the roof between. So everything has a sloping roof now. Everything you see in these views has a minimum slope of, well, the majority of them are 3 to 12 or almost 4 to 12, which means they're standard kind of residential slopes. And the shed roofs that go over the porches on either side are at about 2.5, 12. This means they're all properly sloped roofs. So there is no flat roof in this project. And all of the spots that you're seeing between are sloped to drain away from the building naturally.
So I'm looking at the back of this building here, that I'm looking at, 4A here.
This is the entry side, so you're looking at the northeast elevation, so the upper right-hand corner. And then and that's page 24. Page 25 is looking at the south face, so the face, bottom of the page.
So 25 is the south facing?
Yes, that's the
And
cafe side.
24 is the back facing?
Yep.
No, 24 is the front.
The building kind of has three fronts, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, the-
25 is the patio side.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
drop-off side and patio side. I think
Thank
is
you.
easier.
There you go.
So the back, when you put those posts up and everything, and we were talking about an area where you're thinking about the people sitting underneath there in the shade. Got it.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just trying to get all this.
To be fair, these are views that you will only see these views from a drone or from a plane, right? So the concept here is to show the massing and the shape of things, but not the windows and what you're gonna see. So when the model gets developed more, you'll get views that are from your eye level. And that perception, that's when you start looking at what you're gonna see. This is about showing you the contemporary, traditional blended contemporary style and of the building and how it took cues from the inspirational material that he saw. So one thing to keep in mind is that you're in a drone right now, 50 feet up into the air looking at the roof. So it's sort of unfair in that regard to judge the roof. I think if you saw it, which I'm sure we'll be able to do, is get you views from various places on the site that look at it from eye level, and it'll give you a different perspective of it. So I think we can do that.
Okay, I think there's been plenty of discussion about this.
Thank you, John.
Did you want to
Well
say
put.
Did you need to say anything?
No, when Dan was asking traditional versus contemporary, and, I think it's really hard to say right now because it's really being evolved, but I think a thing to keep in mind is it's just so important that the building is kind of ageless, in the sense of, you know how sometimes you look at it and like, oh, that's from 1970s?
Right.
Or, just
Does
to,
it have a green
making
stove?
sure that things like really blend in and I think Dan made a really good point that we want to make sure that somehow we're capturing we're being a little different, not all the same, but at the same time, we know that it's not such an altering big change that people aren't going to want to vote for it.
I mean, and Lee's right, he's gonna get there. And your possibilities are endless, but you're gonna have to start thinking about it as a team. And we're gonna get input from the public on this, I can assure you. And this is one of those areas where, if you remember way back, I said we'd do input when we had a floor plan and we'd do input when we had elevations.
Right. Absolutely.
And this is one of those areas, because we're looking at it like this. and we're focused on what needs to be done, but the community's like this.
I just wanna make sure that it lasts for now, but 10 years from now, like, oh my God, look at that awesome building,
Building,
you know?
building.
It still has that
Yeah.
same,
That's a good
Paul?
point.
Some cars are timeless and forever.
Yeah.
Some cars you never want to see again.
Right, right,
I'm
absolutely.
talking about my pacer.
That's
Go
going
ahead,
back.
Paul.
Don't worry about my paint type.
Paul's got a
I
question.
printed out the presentation before you made the changes on
Oh, yeah.
your page 10
Yeah.
changes. Is it too much to ask to show us a representation that you have on page 10 with a traditional roof line?
That page, you're talking about the right half of page 10?
With the whole, can you give us a representation of the building with a completely traditional roof line?
Yeah,
Just so we can see it as a committee and.
actually, it's funny you should mention that.
Next two slides.
There was a question raised in the previous meeting about, could you put, I believe it was Selectman Kyra said, could you put a second floor on this building to
No, I think it's
show
just.
how it might work if it were on top of the cafe? And so, page 27 and page 26 show what a second floor on that part of the cafe would look like. And I did this with the team right after our last meeting. So this was the simplest possible roof we could plop on this building, and then put a second floor on top to show how big it would be. This is approximately the same eye level
Okay.
as the one you were just looking at. So it kind of gives you an impression of, it's a little bit higher up in the air, but this gives you an impression of what a completely traditional, straight-ahead gable roof would look like on this building.
Okay.
You're talking about page,
26 and 27.
26 and 27?
Yep.
Yeah, right, I remember him asking that.
So-
Well, I don't know about the rest of the committee, but I think the committee here has to make a decision of the investment that would go into and the cost associated with putting a second floor on something like this.
Are we going into, hold on for a second, Diane. Are we gonna shift from the design into this next part? Are we going, is that your intent here, or were you trying to show us roof line?
I was simply showing you a roof line as a part of the
Oh.
discussion.
All right.
And I don't, what I want to do next time, because I feel we're a little hamstrung by our static illustrations. I have on my laptop the model that this came from, and I can move the sun around. I think I gave you a preview in our last virtual meeting. Move the sun around, move your eye perspective around, and see some things. And John is saying over my shoulder, that's a really good view, or turn around the other way. So I want to share this with you all for next week, because I think it's a much more fair representation than showing a bird's eye view of the building, because the building is designed to change as you move around it, as the light moves around it, and be dynamic on the site. That's first thing. So I'm looking forward to the next time. The second thing is that, in response to Dan's comment about having heart palpitations about the cost of building an asymmetrical roof, the roof design that you see here is actually not complicated. And I'm saying that because I did it on purpose. The twisting that you're seeing, these are actually these are simple roofs. It's a simple shed roof that's just turned slightly to give you an interesting eave line as it goes around the building. It's actually a very simple geometric change. And the roof over the cafe is actually just a standard gable roof with one end lower than the other. Now all of the first half, the left half of the building where the roof is turned to give you a dynamic roof edge, that's all happening above your activity spaces. So it's really just affecting the shape of the attic, essentially.
So if I can go one step further, if I may. So, Paul asked a pretty important question. I don't know if you really heard what he was asking. So you have the Revit model
Yeah.
of the site,
SketchUp, but yeah.
and you've got your roof line on the site. He's asking if you can do that with a traditional, gable.
Yes.
All right, so that they can see, instead of having plain versus well rendered, the same type of rendering for both
Thank you.
choices.
A and
It's
B.
kind of A and B, because I
4A versus 5.
foresee, as someone who's worked here for 10 years, I foresee contemporary being harder to sell than traditional, and I'm not steering you away from designing, and I don't live here.
but I've worked here, and it's not Cambridge. And I just wanna make sure that we're designing something that the voters are gonna look at as being, awesome, and cost-effective, and not cost-effective. And you might be able to get that done with your roof. I'm not looking through, I look at the roof and I looked at it as warped. If you're telling me that's a flat plane, then my heart palpitations have slowed. They haven't stopped, but they've slowed.
Good, because mine haven't.
So, but I just don't wanna go too far down a path where we're not, we know it will never happen, and I just
Understood.
wanna make sure that, we're comparing apples to apples, that's all. I didn't mean to try and ruin your design, I wasn't trying to be a problem, my initial reaction was, we need to see some options on this.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the clarification. I did not understand the nature of your question. We can absolutely do that, and you've reminded me of a suggestion that Grant made this morning of diagrams to show how we got where we are.
Yep.
To show you some of these manipulations of the building.
Awesome. If you showed that with his gable roofs, he'd get a
Yep.
sense, be able to compare.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Move on.
Yes. So I believe the only,
Well, did we want to discuss this? I'm taking a look at this, and you've put some time on this two-story option. And
a little bit.
kind of to committee member Diane's point, I mean, this adds a lot of extra expense into this building. I'm looking at continued fire suppression, an elevator in there, annual inspections and costs, so,
2 stairs and a set of bathrooms.
right.
So I think the premise was future expansion, right?
It was to rough it, not finish it off.
Right.
Similar to what Westfield did. And I think we've demonstrated what it will look like, and it's gonna, I think if you did, and I'm not asking you to do this, but if you showed that in that model, you'd see that it's probably as tall as St. Dorothy's, and it's gonna tower over those houses to the far right side of into the rear.
Yeah.
It's gonna be pretty high. That's a pretty tall building right there.
Yeah, and I think it'll take away from the look of the building myself, but I'm interested to hear other members.
We have in the plan set aside an area for future expansion. I don't know that we need to take a bite out of that apple right now, especially if we have, ground we can do that on, so.
And it'll be a single story, simple to build, and not have an annual maintenance fee of an elevator.
Is this something we want to continue to look at, or is this something that,
Well, it was requested by Selectman Kyra,
There's the
and
expansion there.
Selectman Bendel.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Kind of assented to it, if I recall.
you don't need to go up.
George, may I say something in here?
yes, go ahead.
Yes, Dan is correct. It was suggested by, Mr. Kyra, and that we take a look at this. But I've got to tell you that I've spoken with many seniors in this town, and they all want a one-story. They want a one-story building, and I think that's what they're the ones, that are gonna be enjoying this building and working in this building, and I think from the very beginning, we were all of the opinion that it was gonna be a one-story building. Now, maybe I need to take this, a step further and say, so we can give this architect some direction here. Do we make and you may wanna go around the table first, but do we make a motion here, to eliminate a two-story building, based on the additional cost, should be maybe a second floor here that's
Yeah.
gonna.
The only-
I think
Skip.
Selectman Kyra and I think Selectman Bendel, did us a favor, and once again, as Selectman Kyra did, with the site, we are eliminating a possibility that could have been a question at town meeting. And I think we can easily show with just even this simple diagram that building is too tall for that site. And I think they did us a favor, and we did what they asked, I don't think we need to vote on it, we're not going down that path, because you have the, as.
Right, that was
as,
gonna be my comment. So
right.
Selectman Bendel's not here tonight.
Right.
With all due respect to the individual, we can have maybe some conversation, but I don't
He should have
think.
at least a little input.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I wouldn't entertain a motion on this. I think that Lee, I don't think we need to investigate that anymore, just moving forward. I do see somebody in the back there.
Gail Potapapis, 10 Hilling Road, a second story. Of course, now you'd have to put an elevator in, number one.
Yeah, we've,
And many people say there was an emergency of some sort that happened in the building, like a fire. You can't use the elevator. So those that cannot get down the stairs, I mean,
right. That's all the consideration that we've been looking at on this, so we will not investigate it anymore, Lee, at this point?
Just a question, though, do we have a sense as to, and I know obviously the numbers, but in terms of the scale of additional cost, is it something in the order of adding a, 10% cost to the budget, or is there some way to know that?
It also affects
I can do a quick estimate on what it would cost to add on to the building, where it's scheduled to go versus adding another floor.
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, also, we're talking about the MEP on the building.
Yes.
Just especially with the VRFs or something, we've talked about mechanical in these attic spaces. That's gonna kind of throw a kink into all that.
Yeah, no, well, I'll capture that in the estimate.
Yeah, okay, all right. I mean, I don't wanna do a ton of work on this in particular, but to give us an idea to the manager's point.
Yeah, we're making him do work, I'll have to do some too.
He's got plenty of that going on.
Oh, George, and also, I think another point that we're missing here that's important with regard to a two-story building is it does take away from the square footage of the building. If we need to have an elevator there and two staircases, that's all requiring square footage of the building. Right now, we're working with an 18,000 square foot building, may have to be bigger to accommodate, what we're gonna need and what Dan's gonna work on.
Yeah, Diane, you make an excellent point. If I may echo that a little bit, the first floor of a one-story building is very efficient. The first floor of a second-story building has stairs, elevators, machine rooms, larger mechanical rooms associated with it. So your first floor itself would actually grow beyond 18,000 square feet, plus whatever you put upstairs, plus the additional services required.
And we have to bring ductwork from the second floor to the first floor to bring fresh air down to the first floor, and it's not small.
Okay.
Plus standpipes. Yeah.
Standpipes.
George, I would like to ask you, should we also give this architect direction on maybe in the beginning here, the 4A? Should we take a vote if anybody feels that we proceed? We haven't really come out and said anything about that particular
I think you could on that.
view tonight, and I think it's fair to the architect maybe to, make a motion that we accept option 4A.
Can I make a suggestion, Diane? I think it's pretty clear that there's a consensus amongst everyone, we're going 4A. I'd like to not take that vote until he's developed that center of the building to the satisfaction of
Right.
everyone.
Just in
Because
case
if he
there's
has to
any
twist
change.
it or turn it a little
I
bit,
agree.
it's gonna change the site, so I don't wanna box us in a corner if we can. Yeah, plus Greg's not here and Selectman
Right.
Bendel's not here. I just,
Same one.
Same person.
I know. It's late, George.
I know, I'm getting to my point here.
I'm ready to skip over my,
I know.
what I have to say.
Lee, I also, we're gonna go to the next steps, and I did get a chance to mention this about the custodial closet that's in here. I wanna make sure we have enough room for that. Storage of supplies, maybe an auto scrubber, because it's gonna be needed in this building, so. Just thinking with my facility hat on.
I appreciate that very much, and you'll notice in the plans that the end of the building that has the kitchen attached to it is now the full width of the building.
Yep.
You used to step in, it's now the full width, and it's also extended. That end of the building is growing to capture the appropriate amount of total square footage and to facilitate all of those uses at the end of the building. And that's been accommodated in the most recent plan.
Great, thank you. Next steps?
Next steps. That is impossible to read on the screen, I apologize. But this is just a quick 6-week look ahead to show you that we're moving down the road, and that each one of these dark red boxes is a tick for our meetings that we're having, where we're discussing new topics, reviewing old topics, and moving to the next one. You can read this in the printout version much better. So we give you the abbreviated version. On our next committee meeting, which I understand will be the 9th of March.
Correct.
Can I stop you right then and there? So, we have to have a discussion about that, because you have town meeting on the 3rd.
8th.
8th.
The 8th, you have town meeting on the 8th.
Yeah.
And I think we're a week off cycle now with schools, because we've had 2 weeks of no schools on the town hall project. I'd like to make sure they show up to those meetings. The town hall school administration has missed the last 2 meetings, because they had school committee meetings. All right, so if somehow or another, they changed, we didn't change, we were on target with our every other meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it gets screwed up when there's five Wednesdays in a month. But I think before we announce what our next meeting date might be, it might be the 9th or the 16th. Because I think we're gonna end up doing the 9th for the town hall, because I don't think they have a school committee meeting then, maybe they do.
I think we fell out of.
The school committee changed their meetings the last time on George, and, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, for the
Yeah.
town hall, so.
Well, the other thing is we do have a town meeting on the 8th, so I'm just trying to think what it's gonna be like the next night too.
If it's a quick town meeting, it's gonna be a good night. If it's contentious,
Don't
all
worry.
gonna be grouchy.
Should be.
Yeah.
All right.
You know,
What time's the town meeting start?
Well, we should definitely confirm what the school
Yeah.
schedule is.
Let me just double check with that on the
I'm
second.
not trying to throw them.
I'll get out. I've been reaching out to everybody. You've got plenty of time, and you've seen all this
It's
information.
either
So
gonna be the 9 or the 16, and the other one's either gonna be the.
yeah, we'll get it. We'll get it going.
I don't think,
oh,
Oh, it's at the
so,
shrine.
on March 2nd, aren't we meeting for the town hall school administration building, March 2nd?
we are currently scheduled to meet the 2nd, Diane, but if it's
Yeah.
a school committee meeting, I'm gonna suggest we move that to the 9th.
Yeah, I have to double check that.
Because that'll be 3 meetings in a row, we're developing the school administration
Without school
area.
people there.
We really need we need them to be there.
Right.
Right.
And I did meet with them, so we'll have a
Yeah,
conversation.
and so has, Phil's got a schedule to meet with them next Monday,
Right. Okay.
right?
So I gotta mark up my whole calendar all over it.
Maybe not.
So, the next meeting that we'll have, whenever that is,
Yep.
we'll review the things that we talked about tonight, and I will bring, somehow we'll connect up to the audiovisual system so that we can fly around the model. If we're gonna do it remotely, it's a lot easier. I'll share my desktop and you'll be able to see, if this next meeting's gonna be remote. We'll be able to share the model, we can fly around and you can see what I'm seeing. We'll talk about the new bathroom layout and, the cafe and all the things we talked about tonight. In addition, we will talk about the identification of how these spaces fit with the site and an update of the site. And we should have the survey.
We should have to show them that.
And so we'll have some insights to share about the survey coming from John and his team.
If I don't come, I dug a hole.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not that bad. Hopefully we get good news. And so we'll share the updates of the site survey and how that's affecting our site development and how the building development is marrying better with the site design. And then we'll have our first discussion with Noreen Ciani, our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection engineer, about the building systems and our first crack at best recommendations for this type of building. And then we'll obviously revisit the volumes. Just as a preview, because we want to stay 2 meetings ahead, because there's a lot to get through still. The next meeting after that, we're going to talk about structure, which I'm saying in that way because structure of the building is one of the most closely tied engineering disciplines to the architecture of the building. And so we'll bring in Bill Berry, who's actually taller than me, and he'll come in and we'll talk about structural design and some structural ideas, because I think there's actually a great potential in this building to show off the structure in a very dynamic way.
Great. Very good.
George, did we say at some point in this meeting, that the field survey was almost done?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Dan's expecting it any day now.
I'm expecting it any day.
You're expecting it any day, okay.
What about the
Legion.
traffic study?
That's a little bit longer out,
Okay.
so, winter.
Oh,
Can I just ask,
So,
how Lee, you were
is
saying,
it-
Well, hold on, Diane. Go ahead,
that
Ty.
you were saying that, us being able to see what's on your computer, isn't there a way that we can have that hooked up for this? Can we do that? Can that be happen here?
I don't think they can see it at home.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be able to see it at home, but remotely. And you know what? Truthfully, it all depends on WCTV. They're short-staffed. They're doing a great job by covering us tonight.
Yeah.
But again, with two different meetings going on, they can only do the one.
Oh, I just didn't know if we could hook it up and to see,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize you couldn't see it through WCTV,
Definitely
sorry.
share it next time, but if you stop on by after.
I'm trying to do as many in-person meetings as I can get. It gives a lot of the audience a chance to the public.
Yep,
You know, so,
yep,
Yeah.
all right. Lee, I will say great presentation
Yes.
tonight.
excellent.
yes.
Yeah.
Very good. John,
Definitely.
good job.
Drag on there, sorry.
Oh, so,
Everybody's laughing like, yeah, dude, I didn't need to hear about
well,
the
we-
18 parking
I'm gonna
spaces.
put my dog's zap collar on you next week.
What
Fair
about,
enough.
Thank you for being patient with us.
All right,
Allowing us to be calm.
My pleasure.
George, what about public outreach?
I was just gonna discuss that now.
Oh, thank
Look at
you.
you, you're ahead of me on the schedule. Next item on the agenda, then, was the public outreach.
Yeah, so I had promised you after the last meeting that there'd be a newsletter 48 hours after the meeting. I did accomplish that, but it didn't go out for an additional 48 hours because it needed some editing. So, it did go out that Monday, after the meeting, so it did go out 4 days, within 4 days. We'll probably have the same, something similar, we'll try to get it out within a week of this meeting, because I think this is an important one to get out. There was a lot of really important stuff here. The fact that you've basically made the decision the building's gonna front on the street is a big decision that you can follow as you're going through the minutes, going through the newsletters. So that'll be going out too. And I think the town IT department did an email blast or something that I saw in my inbox with paginations of all the things that we've been supplying through the website, so that anyone who's not clicking onto the website seemed to have gotten that.
Plus some short video clips of different areas,
There's
so.
been video clips of the existing facility and similar on the town hall Roman school.
Dan, on the public outreach, is there some way that we could identify the date that it was released or the month that it was prepared in?
I thought we were doing that. I know we're doing the
Well, you may
volume.
be, maybe I'm just not picking up on it. I came
thought it was
across
in the, I
something
thought it was in the
today.
band at the top. It's not the week,
It
but
says
it's
the
the month.
month, it
It
says the month.
and the number.
And it said, no, it doesn't,
Okay.
it says the volume.
Yeah,
I
volume.
don't think it
Oh,
says
volume
the
number,
date.
right.
It doesn't say the date, it'll say November, number 6.
Okay.
Yeah, but we should have
I
the month
missed
and
that.
and a date in there, right?
I just feel like-
And we changed the color of the town hall school administrations so that you wouldn't get confused between the two projects. Assuming that when you do the school, you're gonna have a third color.
Just to share too, anything that's on that site, on the website, I also have been putting on the senior center Facebook page, so that's also, that all the newsletters, have also been going on that.
Excellent.
Just to let you know that.
Yeah, I think they know I think the public knows it's happening. But I do think we're getting really close to having a forum.
That was my next question.
Yeah, we're gonna need a forum when we start making aesthetic choices for the perimeter.
Well, and I think, this discussion about whether we ought to move in a contemporary direction or a traditional direction, is that something that we should, incorporate into a forum before we go too far down the line with a,
I mean, you hired a building committee to make those decisions on the direction you're going on.
yeah.
At the same time, the building committee stops and takes a pause and gets a pulse of the committee, the community. I don't know that we have enough information to ask the community whether you want contemporary or traditional, because as the designer indicated, he's got some options in there that are a hybrid of the two that may work.
Yeah.
And I think that, I just think we're just not quite there yet. We're almost there. You'll know when you need the public input. You're gonna get to a point where you guys all are sort of there with the elevations, and you're gonna want, you'll start getting the phone calls.
Okay,
If I may.
Well,
go ahead, Lee.
I would like us to get to a point where we are so excited about this building that it doesn't matter what you call it, and that we like it, we love it hopefully, and that we're excited about the shape and about what it's made out of and how it fits in the site, and how it looks in the sun or in the rain or whatever, that you are excited that much about it that call it whatever you want. It is your senior center. That's the goal.
Okay, good.
George, I think also maybe one of the first, outreaches, in doing some of this outreach would be that Lee, when we get a little further down the line, we're a little better, have better, idea of exactly what this building going through, is meeting at the senior center first, and meeting during the day for the seniors, and doing like a forum there first.
I agree.
I think that would be very,
Something
it's
we
just
should
a
set.
suggestion.
Well,
that-
I mean, do you think it would be positive, Diane, for us to do, an afternoon session with the seniors and then
Well, actually,
that
that's
night
what I
a
was gonna
public
ask.
session?
Right.
So we have the same
right.
presentation twice.
I really think so, because I think evenings for them to come out,
Tough.
and,
Tough.
but they're more comfortable in their own building, and,
Nobody would be there at night.
just a suggestion.
That's a good idea.
That I thought maybe that might be one of the
Good.
my first areas.
So-
and,
To talk off
yeah.
of what Diane is saying, just to let you know, people have been calling, people have been very attentive to this, and people have, seniors have asked, please let us know, we love to be able to meet, and be able to ask our questions and get a better feel. So, I really see that as a positive, in the sense that people are being more aware, people are reading, and people are getting a little more specific as to the certain things about the building, as to, is this going to be happening, which I think is a great thing. So I think Diane makes a really good point of, and actually they are asking, when do you think they could come to the center and meet? So
Then we need
it
to
will
work
be
on it.
well attended.
Let me ask a question. Is it impossible? Because I know we all have day jobs. Is it impossible to have a meeting at the senior center? So do a meeting like we're having a meeting here, so they can interact with the meeting? As
Well,
opposed to,
I
as opposed
think
to just a presentation.
To Terry's point, have maybe a little open group during the day, when they are very familiar with their site, more comfortable in their surroundings.
Okay.
I think that's something Lee, yourself, myself, Terry, that we could set up.
Okay.
I'd love to print out some boards of the plans.
That would be great.
and
That would
the
be
outside
so
of the building
wonderful.
That we could leave with you on some easels before the meeting, so they could.
And they
put their
could go
questions
around
down.
to different buildings
That's one of
also.
the outreach items that we've talked about, is at what
Right.
point in time do we put the easel up in the library, the town hall,
Almost.
and the
Senior
senior
center.
And you're right, it's not there yet. If we put up what we have today, we'll have more confused voters than we'll have educated voters. And I just think we're almost there. Be a little more patient, because we're gonna have a period where the public can comment, and we might have to revisit. We may all say, okay, we got 13 comments, and 13 of them don't like the hip roofs, they want a flat roof. And Lee does the, yay.
Yeah.
The rest of us don't. So, but I think that, we're gonna go through those cycles,
Okay.
Okay.
all right?
Thank
We
you.
have a-
George, I want to make one last comment here that I learned tonight from being Zoom here and having the presentation. Now I understand why I've gotten some calls that people say, I can't see what they're talking about. If I didn't have two things going tonight, you just can't see, you can't see the board. It's just white. It's just so unfortunate, and that the people that are even watching WCTV are not going to be able to, really see the entire presentation of the board. I guess that's about the best we can do, but it's
But
really unfortunate.
I think that's one of the reasons why Leah's asking for a remote meeting to show the modeling, because when you're in front of your whole entire PC becomes that model rotating. You can't miss it. And we don't get that with this hybrid here.
It's just tougher for the public to be here and
Right.
interact and give us comments, so.
Right. And the board that is right near you, Dan, is just white, and I'm sure, the camera is not facing, the other board where Lee had his pointer going and everything. So I can understand why people were just relying on a lot of the outreach written material and everything.
Okay.
I just learned something tonight, and now I know.
Does,
Thank you.
does WCTV use all of the cameras?
Yeah,
Yes.
You do?
there's four.
4 of them, and you use one at a time?
No, well, I switch from, that's what I do here. This is 4 cameras. You can only shoot one at a time.
One at a time.
We can't do picture in picture. Maybe the technology is there, we're just not going there. Like, I can see this picture very nice, it's cocked a little bit. That tells me that I did it, if it's crooked, because that is not the same as that. But what
It's
I'm
an
getting
angle.
at is,
Yeah.
her technology, she's watching what I'm doing on one screen and what her computer is seeing on another screen. So she's
Yeah.
looking at 2 things, and the question was, are you seeing what we're seeing? She is when I have that camera aimed at that screen.
Okay.
And another thing she said is all I see is reflection. Somebody brought up a reflection. All she was seeing was a reflection at one point. So, yes.
If we put a camera, one of the cameras, onto one of these TVs and had it angled correctly,
Yes.
could we put that camera onto the TV and work on getting it?
This camera is aimed at that screen,
Okay,
and you can tip it. Typically, it would be so nice if we can directly connect from a computer to here.
Right.
Right,
Take a feed.
that would be the way to
Just
go.
not there yet.
And what you're getting is all that beautiful graphics that you did on all of
yeah, it's a
that.
white screen, I can see it on her.
Yes, yes. So we might just have to rethink some of these things to make
Yeah.
it work better. And the people at home may or may not be seeing what we're all seeing.
All right. I thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, well, that kind of segues into our discussion, public comment before I go out to the public. Any other comments from committee members at this point?
I think we said enough tonight, George.
I think so. Great job. Public comment? Great, thank you very much. I'll entertain one more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second motion.
A seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd ask Paul if I could make the motion.
Great meeting, everybody, thank
That's
you.
fantastic.